Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we step softly into New York during the Great Blizzard of 1888, when a proud, noisy city falls asleep under a mountain of snow. What happens when the gas lamps blur, the streetcars stop, and the windows turn white before breakfast? What does comfort mean when the world outside disappears, one cold inch at a time? You're inside a rented room, wrapped in wool, hearing the stove breathe and the wind press its shoulder against the glass. Outside, Broadway is losing its shape, the harbour is vanishing, horses lower their heads into flying ice, as if they have also received terrible news. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and while your blanket is still warm, comment where you're listening from and your local time. It is always strange and lovely to imagine quiet rooms glowing across the world. Now, dim the lights. You're lying in a narrow bed in New York City in March of 1888, with the covers pulled to your chin. The room is not grand, but it is yours for the night. A faint smell of coal smoke hangs around the ceiling, mixed with old plaster, damp wool, and the sleepy sweetness of yesterday's bread. Somewhere below, a stove ticks and settles, making small iron sounds in the dark. The mattress beneath you is uneven, stuffed with patience and probably several mysterious opinions. Still, it holds you well enough. Outside the window, the first flakes drift through the lamplight. At first, they seem harmless. Snow often looks polite at the beginning, which is honestly one of its more dishonest habits. It falls in soft scraps, settling along window ledges and carriage steps. The city has seen storms before. New Yorkers, even in 1888, do not consider themselves easily impressed. They have ferries, factories, elevated trains, telegraph offices, theatres, markets, newspapers, and an enormous talent for complaint. Yet this storm is already different. You do not know that yet. Of course, nobody in the warm rooms knows it clearly. On the evening of March 11th, rain has been falling across the city, and many people expect ordinary wet weather. Boots are muddy, doorways smell of soaked leather, umbrellas drip beside beds and counters, creating little indoor puddles that servants and shop boys privately resent. The air has begun to turn. You feel it in the bones of the room before you understand it. The window glass grows colder against the curtains. The floorboards seem to tighten. The draught slipping beneath the door becomes sharper, like a thin blade of winter asking for admission. You pull the blanket closer and listen to the city shifting in its sleep. New York is not quiet. Even at night, hooves strike stone, wheels grind through slush. A late streetcar bell clanks somewhere along the avenue. Men call to one another outside saloons, their voices blurred by weather and distance. Farther off, a tugboat sends a low note through the harbour fog, tired and mournful. Then the sounds begin to change. Rain taps the pane for a while, then spits, then scratches. The soft patter becomes a dry hiss. The wind gathers itself between buildings, finding corners, alleys, chimneys, and loose shutters. It has many instruments and no manners at all. By midnight the flakes are thicker, and the lamplight outside looks wrapped in gauze. You sit up a little. The room is dim, warmed by a coal stove somewhere beyond your door. Its heat travels unevenly, generous near the pipe and stingy near the floor. Your fingertips touch the sheet, which feels cool but not cruel. You can smell dust warming on metal, a scent both comforting and slightly suspicious. It is the smell of indoor survival. Across the room, a chair holds your clothes. Your coat is heavy wool, dark from the damp evening. Your boots wait beneath it, stiffening slowly. A hat rests upside down on the seat, collecting shadows in its brim. These ordinary objects look reliable, almost loyal. You believe they will serve you tomorrow. That belief will be tested. In the late 19th century, New York has grown into a city that likes to imagine itself modern. Elevated railway lines run above the streets, carrying clerks, shoppers, labourers, and dreamers through clouds of steam and soot. Telegraph wires web the sky between poles and rooftops. Newspapers boast of speed. Offices open early. Markets move with brutal energy. Everything depends on motion. A blizzard is motion's rude little cousin. It does not merely fall, it blocks, buries, blinds, and interrupts. This one will become one of the most famous storms in American history, striking the northeastern United States from March 11th to March 14th, 1888. In New York, snow will pile into immense drifts. Winds will roar through streets, and thousands of people will find that modern life has a very delicate spine. For now, you only hear the beginning. A clock somewhere in the building marks the hour with a tired chime. The sound travels through plaster and timber, faint as a memory, being careful not to wake anyone. A person coughs in the next room. Another turns in bed, making the old springs complain. The city is full of such small private noises, little human proofs against the weather. You lie back again. The pillow smells faintly of soap and stored linen. Your cheek finds a cool place, and your breathing slows. The wind rises, then eases, then returns with greater confidence. Snow hits the glass in bursts, like handfuls of salt thrown by an invisible cook with poor emotional control. You almost smile at that thought. Sleep comes near, then wanders off. Perhaps you are thinking of morning. Perhaps you need to cross town. Perhaps you work near Printing House Square or in a shop, or in an office where punctuality is worshipped with unreasonable devotion. Perhaps you're only visiting the city, and you imagine breakfast beside a frosted window, while the streets sparkle pleasantly below. That is a charming fantasy. The real morning is quietly preparing something less convenient. By the early hours, the temperature drops fast. Wet streets begin to freeze beneath new snow. The storm strengthens as cold air and moist air collide over the region, though no one lying under blankets phrases it quite so neatly. People know weather by the ache in fingers, by the stove's appetite, by the way animals refuse to settle. Some householders have already noticed signs. A landlady downstairs has ordered extra coal brought closer to the stove. She has also muttered about the price because comfort is never free and coal men know it. A servant has shaken out damp rugs near the entry, wrinkling her nose at the smell of mud and horse manure. A boarder has joked that he may need snowshoes to reach breakfast. The joke will age poorly. Beyond the rooming house, the city's poor feel winter first. In tenements, families sleep close together for warmth, with blankets shared across narrow beds. Windows rattle in loose frames. Coal is counted carefully, not as a convenience, but as a measure of survival. A kettle left near the stove gives off a faint mineral smell, promising tea if the morning allows it. New York is a city of layers. There are mansions where thick curtains keep the cold at a respectful distance. There are boarding houses where strangers share walls thin enough to hear dreams being rehearsed. There are cellar rooms where damp seems to rise from the earth and settle inside the lungs. The same snow will fall on all of them, but not equally. The night deepens. You hear a carriage pass with difficulty, its wheels grinding against frozen ruts. The horse snorts, a wet, tired sound, and the driver says something sharp into the wind. His words vanish almost immediately. The storm accepts no speeches. Even rude ones are swallowed whole. A strange whiteness presses against the window. When you rise again and touch the curtain, the fabric feels cold and slightly damp. You lift it just enough to peer outside. The gas lamp across the street glows like a yellow coin dropped into milk. Snow flies sideways now, not downward, and the pavement has become uncertain. The opposite buildings are fading at the edges. The city is being erased, not destroyed, not yet. Erased is the better word for this hour. Lines soften, corners blur, doorsteps disappear, iron railings become pale ribs under powder. The world has not ended, but it has become badly edited. You lower the curtain. Your fingers are chilled from that brief contact with the glass. You rub them together and return to bed, feeling the blanket receive you with humble kindness. The sheets are not luxurious, and the pillow has surrendered in the middle. Still, the room feels like a small boat on a white sea. Somewhere a pipe knocks. The sound is ordinary, and because it is ordinary, it comforts you. History often enters life while people are thinking about household sounds. A pipe knocks, a kettle hums, a floorboard creaks, and meanwhile, the century changes its mind outside. You do not hear destiny. You hear the building staying awake. Weather forecasting in 1888 is improving, but still limited. Observers gather reports, compare pressure readings, and send information by telegraph when wires behave themselves. Forecasts exist, but they do not yet possess the confidence of later science. Scholars still debate whether officials truly missed the storm's danger, or whether the available tools simply could not reveal its violence in time. Either way, the night is unimpressed. The snow continues its quiet invasion. It collects against doors, clings to signs, and thickens along awnings until the canvas sags. It crawls over crates left outside shops. It fills hoof prints almost as soon as they are made. It settles on window boxes where dead winter stems poke upward, brave and pointless. One quirky story, told in later memories, says some New Yorkers first treated the storm as entertainment. A few people stepped outside to taste the drama, only to discover that drama has poor hospitality. Hats vanished, moustaches froze, skirts snapped against ankles. Respect arrived quickly, carried by the wind. Inside, you are luckier. Your room holds a small circle of mercy. The air is dry near the stove heat and cold near the walls. A cup on the washstand tastes faintly metallic when you drink from it. The water has the flat chill of a winter room. You place it back carefully, because even small sounds feel larger at night. The bed creaks as you settle. You turn toward the wall, where the wallpaper shows a faded pattern of vines. In daylight, it may look tired, even ugly. In this low glow, it resembles a garden trying to remember itself. The thought is pleasant enough. You let your eyes rest on the dim shapes. The wind pushes harder. For a moment, the whole building seems to breathe inward. A shutter bangs somewhere above, then bangs again, then gives up or is secured by some irritated soul in a nightshirt. The sound fades into the greater roar. You imagine the person grumbling in the hall, candle trembling, feet cold against the boards. There is always someone awake. A city is never fully asleep. Even when buried, bakers begin before dawn. Stable hands check animals. Newspaper workers chase headlines through miserable weather. Police officers patrol with collars turned high. Doctors keep bags ready by their doors. And somewhere, undoubtedly, a man insists the storm is nothing much, because every century produces that man. He is probably cold. You close your eyes and picture the street below. The stoops are soft white slopes now. The gutters are hidden. The lamps burn stubbornly, though their light is shrinking. A milk wagon may be somewhere in the storm, wheels dragging, horse blinking snow from its lashes. A newsboy may be asleep with papers tied for morning delivery, not yet knowing the morning is resigned. The warmth around you becomes deeper, not warmer exactly, but more precious. The blanket's rough wool presses against your chin. The sheet lies smooth against your legs. Your feet find a pocket of retained heat. which feels like a private miracle. Outside, winter owns everything. Inside, you have this narrow bed, this dim room, this breathing dark. You begin to drift. The storm does not soften, but your attention does. Sounds stretch and separate. The hiss against the window becomes almost steady, like faraway surf. The stove tick becomes a slow clock. The building's creaks become wooden sighs. Even the wind, rude as it is, begins to seem less like an enemy and more like a very dramatic lecturer. It has a long lecture prepared. By dawn, New York will wake to streets already transformed. Many people will look from windows and feel the first ripple of disbelief. Some will still try to go out, because duty is stubborn and rent is persuasive. Others will stay near the stove, listening for footsteps in halls and news from the street. You are still between waking and sleep. The room darkens and pales by turns as snow clouds move across the hidden sky. The gas lamp outside flickers behind whiteness. Your breath warms the edge of the blanket. You think, perhaps, that morning will bring inconvenience, wet boots, delayed errands, and a story worth telling over supper. You do not yet imagine tunnels through snow. You do not yet imagine frozen telegraph lines sagging above silent streets. You do not yet imagine elevated trains halted in the air. Passengers trapped in modern confidence turned suddenly ridiculous. You only know that the bed is warm, the air is cold, and the window has become a white wall. That's enough for now. The city outside is losing its noise, one layer at a time. The wheels fade. The voices fade. The bells fade. Snow takes the hard edges of New York and pads them, muffles them, hushes them. It turns the Iron City into something soft and strange, something almost dreamlike. You breathe slowly. The wool scratches gently beneath your chin. Cold smoke lingers in the room like a dark ribbon. Frost gathers at the window's lower corners, delicate and stubborn. The storm keeps writing itself across the glass, though no one has asked for such a long message. Sleep finally settles beside you. Not fully, not deeply, but enough to loosen your thoughts. You float inside the room while the blizzard grows outside, patient and immense. The city believes it knows how morning works. The storm, with terrible calm, has other plans, and under the blanket, you listen. You wake before the room is ready to become morning. The window has turned pale, but not bright. Light enters through the curtains in a muffled grey, as if the sun has wrapped itself in wool and decided not to argue. The air touches your nose first. It is colder than it should be, and sharper too, with that clean metallic smell that comes when snow has taken command outside. For a moment, you remain very still. The blanket is warm over your shoulders. The sheet has cooled where your knees press against it. Somewhere in the building, a stove door opens with a clatter, and coal is shoveled in with a gritty scrape. You smell smoke, iron, damp ashes, and breakfast struggling toward existence. It is a brave little breakfast, considering the circumstances. A woman's footsteps pass in the hall. They move carefully, heel and toe, as if the floorboards might object. A key turns in a lock, a door opens, a short gasp follows, not loud, but honest. Then comes a whisper, carried thinly through the wood. Mercy, that single word tells you more than any newspaper could. You rise from the bed and find the floor with one cautious foot. The boards are cold enough to make your toes curl, and the rug beside the bed feels thin, flattened, and frankly overconfident about its purpose. You pull on stockings, then another pair. The wool scratches your ankles, but you accept this bargain. Comfort, in winter, is often just irritation with better intentions. The washstand waits beside the wall. Its pitcher holds water from the night, and a skin of ice is formed at the top. You press it with a fingertip, and it cracks softly, like a tiny frozen pond pretending to be dramatic. The basin smells faintly of soap and mineral water. You splash your face, then instantly regret your courage. You are awake now. A coal stove, glowing in the common room downstairs, has become the building's true heart. Its warmth is not generous enough to travel everywhere, but its presence changes the mood of the house. People move toward it as quietly as moths toward flame. The hallway smells of damp boots, wool coats, hot metal, and someone's badly boiled coffee. You dress slowly. Your shirt is cool against your back. Your vest carries the dry smell of yesterday's indoor air. Your coat is still faintly damp at the hem, and when you touch it, the wool feels heavy and reluctant. Your boots have stiffened during the night. You work your feet into them with the patience of a saint, or at least a person who has no better option. At the window, you lift the curtain. The world outside is not merely snowy, it is rearranged. The street has lost its ordinary depth. You can see only a short distance, perhaps to the nearest stoop, perhaps not even that when the wind surges. Snow races sideways in wild sheets. It swirls upward, then drops in sudden curtains, then bursts apart again around chimneys and railings. The gas lamp across the way is no longer a lamp, it is a blurred yellow ghost. You lean closer. Cold leaks from the glass into your fingers. Frost feathers the corners in delicate patterns, finer than lace and much less helpful. The sill is dusted with powder where the window frame has failed its simple assignment. Below, the steps are rounded humps. A fence shows only its top rail. A carriage abandoned near the curb looks like a half-buried animal sleeping badly. You let the curtain fall. Downstairs, voices gather around the stove. They are soft at first, then brighter, because people like to discuss weather as though it were a visitor with poor manners. A clerk says the city will clear by noon. A seamstress disagrees, and she is treated with less respect than she deserves. A travelling salesman announces that trains are always delayed in winter, but never for long. He sounds almost cheerful. That is how trouble enters respectable rooms. It arrives wearing the hat of inconvenience. Breakfast is served with a simplicity that feels almost ceremonial. Coffee, bread, butter if you are lucky, perhaps porridge thick enough to hold a spoon upright and make a small political statement. Steam rises from cups and bowls, and the smell of toasted bread briefly defeats the odour of wet wool. You hold a cup with both hands, feeling heat soak into your palms. The room itself seems to listen. Curtains stir at the window. The stove breathes. Coal settles with a red whisper behind its iron door. Around you, boarders sit at a long table, some wrapped in shawls, some still buttoning collars. Everyone glances toward the whitened panes. Even those pretending calm cannot stop looking. Weather has become the main guest. In 1888, official forecasts depend on scattered observations, pressure readings, wind reports, and telegraph messages sent from station to station. That is a remarkable system for its age, and also a fragile one. When weather moves quickly, information moves unevenly. When wires go down, knowledge becomes local again, which is a polite way of saying everyone starts guessing. And goodness, people guess. One man claims the wind has shifted twice before dawn. Another says his knees predicted snow on Saturday. A woman near the stove mentions that cats hid under the kitchen range all evening, which she considers superior science. You cannot dismiss her entirely. The cats, at least, are indoors and smug. The storm has arguments of its own. It strikes the windows with little hard grains, not soft flakes now, but icy particles clicking against glass. The sound is steady, dry, and unpleasantly determined. Wind forces snow through cracks near the door, leaving a pale line across the threshold. Each time someone opens the outer entrance, cold slams into the hall like an offended relative. A servant tries to sweep the entry. She attacks the snow with a broom, muttering under her breath, and for a moment she appears to win. Then the wind shoves another spray through the doorway, across the mat and around her shoes. She pauses, rests both hands on the broom handle, and gives the storm a stare of such personal betrayal that everyone nearby wisely says nothing. The kettle begins to whistle. Its note rises thin and bright, nearly swallowed by the wind. Hot water pours into cups, loosening tea leaves with a dark, earthy smell. Someone passes a small jar of preserves. The sweetness glows against the morning gloom. You spread it over bread, and the knife drags crumbs across the plate. It feels domestic, almost peaceful. Outside, peace is busy being cancelled. The city's horse-car lines, which run along rails set into the streets, are already struggling. Snow fills the tracks faster than workers can clear them. Horses strain against drifts, harness leather creaking, breath smoking in rough white clouds. Drivers shout into wind that throws the words back at their faces. Wheels turn, slip, then lock. A street without movement becomes strange. New York depends on rhythm. Carts arrive, shops open, ferries connect, newspapers circulate, clerks report, markets bargain, and thousands of feet beat their claims into the pavement. This morning, rhythm breaks into fragments. A bell rings once and stops. A hoofbeat begins and disappears. A shout emerges, then becomes snow. You pull your coat tighter. The collar scratches your neck. The lining smells of stored tobacco, rain, and wool. Someone asks whether you intend to go out. The question sounds casual, but several people look up. In a storm like this, every ordinary decision becomes entertainment for others. Human concern often wears the face of curiosity. You say you only want to look. This is technically true, and technically foolish. At the front door, cold gathers like an animal waiting to spring. The landlady stands nearby with her arms folded, guarding the entrance as if she personally owns the heat. She warns you not to track snow across the hall. This is the sort of instruction that survives even the collapse of civilization. You open the door a crack. The wind punches through at once. Snow streams across your boots and lashes your cheeks. It smells clean, bitter, and faintly smoky from chimneys beating against the storm. Your eyelashes prickle. The street outside is a pale confusion. A man across the way leans forward into the gale, taking steps so slow he seems to be negotiating with each one. You shut the door quickly. The hallway seems warmer than a palace. Your cheeks burn as they thaw. Snow melts on your coat sleeve, darkening the wool. You stamp your boots, earning a sharp look from the landlady, whose standards remain heroic. Behind you, the roomers ask what you saw. You describe very little, because very little could be seen. That frightens them more. The morning carries small rituals of preparation. Coal scuttles are checked, candles are counted, window gaps are stuffed with rags, old newspapers, and any cloth too ugly to be missed. A child is told not to stand near the door, then stands near the door anyway. Someone fills a pitcher while the pipes still cooperate. Food becomes a subject of sudden seriousness. There is bread enough for the day, perhaps 2 days if sliced with moral discipline. There are potatoes in the cellar, though reaching them requires descending into a chill dampness where the walls smell of earth. There is tea, there is coffee, there may be bacon, depending on who's asking and who is answering. No one says famine. No one needs to. The worry is smaller and more immediate. Will the baker open? Will milk arrive? Will coal deliveries stop? Will the butcher's boy appear with red hands and dramatic news? Ordinary supply lines, so invisible in comfort, reveal themselves the moment they tremble. This is one mainstream truth of urban life. A great city is not one machine, but thousands of daily agreements. Someone agrees to bring coal. Someone agrees to bake bread. Someone agrees to feed horses. Someone agrees to repair wires, clean streets, carry messages, sweep crossings, haul goods, and open doors. Snow does not need to defeat everyone. It only needs to interrupt enough agreements at once. The stove glows brighter. You sit near it, feeling heat settle into your knees. Its iron side radiates with a dry, blunt warmth. A faint smell of singed dust rises when someone drapes damp gloves too close. The gloves steam miserably, then curl at the fingers as if ashamed of themselves. A newspaper from the previous day lies folded on the table. Its headlines belong to another world. Politics, markets, theatre notices, shipping reports, auctions, advertisements for tonics with bold promises and suspicious grammar. Yesterday, everything seemed urgent. This morning, the old news feels almost quaint. The Storm has become editor-in-chief, and it has rejected all other topics. Still, people crave information. A lodger claims he heard that Washington has sent warnings northward. Another insists the worst is east of the city. A third says storms from the sea always exhaust themselves by morning, which shows a touching faith in weather's work ethic. Historians still argue whether New York's residents were genuinely surprised by the storm's severity, or whether later storytelling made their confidence seem greater than it was. Memory improves drama. It often does. A quirky tidbit drifts into conversation from an older gentleman with splendid whiskers. He says some city families keep tiny foot warmers, metal boxes filled with hot coals, to carry in carriages or place beneath pews during long church services. He adds that anyone laughing at such devices has never endured a sermon in February. Several people nod solemnly. Comfort has always required tools. There are soapstone warmers, warmed bricks wrapped in cloth, bedpans filled with coals, and heavy quilts stitched from older garments. There are curtains thick enough to keep draughts away, and carpets meant to stop cold rising through boards. There are kitchen ranges, parlour stoves, coal grates, and the humble miracle of keeping doors closed. You feel the truth of that. The room's warmth depends on boundaries, shut doors, covered windows, banked coal, shared space. Your breath moves more easily near the stove than near the staircase. The building is a patchwork of temperatures, each room holding or losing heat according to chance, money, maintenance, and stubbornness. The smell of soup begins near midday. It starts faintly, with onions softening in fat. Then comes carrot, potato, pepper, and the deeper scent of bones or scraps giving themselves up to broth. The aroma slips under doors and gathers people without announcement. Hunger is an efficient organizer. It needs no committee. Outside, the wind keeps pressing. The glass trembles in its frame. Snow builds against the lower panes until the room seems closer to the ground than it should. A boy climbs onto a chair to see better, then reports that the street has become a hill. His mother tells him not to exaggerate. He replies that the hill is exaggerating first. That earns laughter. Gentle laughter helps. It does not clear snow or mend wires, but it warms the air between people. The salesman, less cheerful now, admits he may not reach his appointment. The seamstress says her work will wait, because sleeves cannot complain from across town. The clerk watches the door and tries to look unconcerned. You understand him. Duty sits uneasily beside safety. In a city where wages depend on attendance, staying warm can feel like disobedience. Many workers will attempt the streets despite the storm, not because they are reckless, but because rent, hunger, employers, and pride all speak loudly. The blizzard does not erase class, it reveals it in white. By afternoon, the room grows dim again. The snow thickens against the windows, and the sky lowers until noon feels like twilight. Lamps are lit early, their flames giving off a faint, oily smell. Shadows soften along the walls, the stove pops, and everyone turns toward the sound as if it has made an announcement. The day is narrowing. You sip tea gone slightly bitter at the bottom of the cup. The heat reaches your throat and spreads through your chest. Outside, The storm has not finished speaking. It has barely begun to explain itself. Inside, you learn the quiet art of waiting, wrapped in wool, warmed by coal, listening as the modern city hesitates. And in that hesitation, the room grows tender. You step outside because curiosity has dressed itself as courage. The door opens with effort, scraping against snow that has packed itself along the threshold. For one strange second, the outside air seems to pause, as if it has noticed you personally. Then the wind arrives with its full opinion. It slaps your cheeks, fills your ears, and sends loose snow spinning around your boots. The cold is immediate. It does not politely approach. It climbs inside your collar, bites through your gloves, and finds every seam your clothing foolishly trusted. Your breath tears out in white bursts. The street before you has become a trembling blankness, with buildings appearing and vanishing like thoughts you cannot hold. You grip the railing. The iron is cold through your glove, hard and faintly wet. Snow has formed along it in thick ridges, smoothing every decorative curl into a pale, swollen line. The stoop steps are no longer steps, only soft platforms slanting into the street. You place one boot forward, and it sinks much deeper than expected. That is your first lesson. Snow is not always light. Here, driven and packed by wind, it has become dense, stubborn, and sly. It accepts your foot, then holds it. You pull upward, and your boot comes free with a muffled suck. The effort warms your leg. The snow immediately fills the hole behind you, erasing the evidence of your poor decision. A wagon stands near the curb. Only part of it is visible. One wheel shows in a dark crescent, rimmed with ice. The rest is buried under a drift that climbs toward the seat. The horse is gone, thankfully, or perhaps led away before the storm worsened. The shafts jut from the snow like the handles of a broken tool. Across the street a man appears. He's moving sideways, almost crab-like, with one arm raised to shield his face. His hat is tied under his chin with a scarf, an arrangement that would look comic in kinder weather. He takes 3 steps, stops, bends into the wind, and takes 2 more. Every movement is a negotiation. You try to call out. The wind steals your voice. You cannot tell whether he hears anything. He lifts a hand, or perhaps the storm lifts it for him. Then snow closes between you, and he becomes a shadow, then a blur, then nothing. The disappearance is quiet and unsettling. In ordinary weather, the city is full of witnesses. In this whiteness, even nearby people feel far away. You step down from the stoop. The street is no longer flat. It rises in slopes and hollows, piled high near fences, scoured lower where wind has carved a path. Snow grains strike your face like powdered glass. Your eyes water, then chill. You blink rapidly, and your lashes feel heavy. A sign swings overhead. It creaks on its bracket, though the painted name is hidden by snow plastered across the board. The sound is thin and lonely, a metallic whine cutting through the roar. Somewhere unseen, a shutter bangs again and again. It has the persistence of a small argument nobody wants to finish. The city smells different. Snow has buried the usual odours of manure, garbage, smoke, fish stalls, damp cellars, and busy humanity. What remains is coal smoke, sharpened by cold, and the faint animal scent of stables behind closed doors. Now and then the wind drags up a sour whiff from a blocked gutter, just to remind you that New York has not become a poem entirely. A horse car is stuck ahead. You make it out only when the snow thins for a moment. The car sits at an angle in the road, its windows clouded, its roof wearing a thick white cap. 2 horses stand in harness, heads low, manes iced along the edges. A driver and several men are digging near the wheels with shovels, boards, and what looks like a coal scoop. They are not winning. The rails beneath the snow are invisible, the wheels have frozen into ruts, and every gust sweeps fresh powder over the track. The men bend, lift, throw, pause, cough, and bend again. Their coats are stiff with frost. One laughs suddenly. Not from amusement, but from the absurdity of arguing with a sky. A passenger climbs down carefully. She holds her skirt high with one hand and clutches a bundle with the other. Her boots vanish to the ankle. She looks offended, which is fair. A gentleman offers his arm, then nearly falls himself. They recover with grave dignity, because dignity is easiest when no one can see clearly. You keep to the buildings. That is safer. The wind is slightly less cruel near the walls, though it bursts from side streets with theatrical malice. Snow has drifted against cellar doors and basement windows. Some panes are already covered completely. People inside those lower rooms must see only a pale glow where daylight ought to be. The thought makes the air colder. New York streets are full of hidden lives. Shopkeepers sleep above counters. Families crowd into tenements. Servants climb stairs before dawn. Stable boys curl near haylofts. Seamstresses work by weak light. Clerks rent beds in boarding houses, counting coins and collars. The blizzard does not stop the city from being unequal. It simply draws a white curtain over every difference, then lets hardship sort them again. You pass a bakery. Its shutters are closed, but a warm yeasty smell seeps from somewhere behind them. It floats into the storm for only a moment before the wind tears it apart. That scent is almost painful. Fresh bread, in such weather, feels less like food and more like a rumour from a civilized planet. A boy emerges from a doorway. He carries newspapers under his coat, trying to keep them dry. His cap is pulled low, his ears red, his cheeks raw. He shouts a headline, but the words dissolve into the white air. The papers flap against his chest. He looks too small for the weather and too practiced to admit it. Newsboys are part of the city's pulse. In the late 19th century, they sell papers on streets, at ferry landings, near stations, and outside busy offices. Some are children with families to help. Some live rougher lives, sleeping where warmth can be borrowed. In a storm like this, selling news means walking into danger one icy step at a time. The boy sees you looking. He lifts a paper with hopeful professionalism. You fumble for a coin with gloved fingers, and the metal feels brutally cold. He hands over a damp sheet, already softening at the edges. The ink smells sharp. You tuck the paper inside your coat without reading. The act matters more than the headline. The boy grins briefly. Then the wind nearly takes his cap. He grabs it with both hands and staggers backward into a doorway. Someone inside pulls him by the sleeve, and the door closes against the storm. That small rescue leaves you warmer than the coin did. The street seems less empty for a moment, filled with unseen hands ready to reach. You move onward. The snow is deeper near the corner. A drift has formed where two buildings funnel the wind, rising almost to your waist. You try to climb it and sink to mid-thigh. The cold presses through your trousers immediately. For a moment, you're stuck, leaning forward with one hand braced against a wall, looking like a tragic monument to poor planning. You free yourself slowly. Each movement must be deliberate. Pull one leg, pack the snow, shift weight, pull the other. The wind hisses around your hat, your breath comes faster. Warm inside the scarf, damp against your mouth. The cloth soon grows icy where your breathing touches it. This is exhausting. Snow travel turns distance into labour. A single block becomes a small expedition. A crossing becomes a moral test. Streets once measured by minutes now demand muscle, patience, and luck. The city has not grown larger, yet it feels vast. Familiar corners become uncertain territory. At the intersection, do you stop? A policeman stands there, or tries to. His dark uniform is dusted white, and his helmet has collected a ridiculous crown of snow. He uses a club to probe the ground ahead of him, testing for curbs hidden beneath drifts. A woman asks him the way to a nearby avenue. He points, then lowers his arm quickly against the wind. His moustache is frozen. It is hard not to notice. Little white needles cling to it, giving him the look of a walrus with municipal responsibilities. He remains solemn, which makes it worse. Somewhere inside the storm, New York's dignity is taking several small injuries. A group of men struggle with a delivery sled. The sled may once have been a cart, or perhaps someone has improvised runners beneath a platform. It carries crates covered with canvas. The men pull ropes across their shoulders, leaning forward like canal horses. Their boots slide. One curses quietly enough to remain almost polite. Another tells him to save his breath. You smell oranges. The scent comes unexpectedly from a broken crate, bright and sweet against the cold. A few fruits have spilled into the snow, glowing like little suns at the edge of a drift. One rolls, hits a buried stone, and stops. A gloved hand snatches it up. Even in disaster, produce must be accounted for. That bright smell stays with you. It mixes with cold smoke and icy air, making the street feel briefly alive again. Cities are made of such surprises. A bakery behind shutters, oranges in snow, frozen moustaches, a woman laughing while being helped over a drift, a streetcar trapped like a parlour cabinet in the road. Yet danger remains close. People lose direction in whiteouts. Exhaustion can creep in before pride admits it. A drift may hide a step, a rail, an open cellar entrance, or a pile of debris. Horses can slip and panic. Carts can overturn. The wind can turn a familiar route into a maze within minutes. Historians continue to question the exact number of storm deaths in New York and nearby areas. Records were gathered unevenly, and newspapers sometimes counted differently. What everyone agrees on is simpler and sadder. The blizzard killed many people, stranded many more, and showed how easily a great city could become vulnerable when weather-blocked movement. A church bell begins ringing. The sound comes faintly through the snow, low and blurred. Perhaps it marks the hour. Perhaps someone is calling attention to a shelter. Perhaps wind is shaking the bell in its tower, making time meaningless and dramatic. You cannot tell. The uncertainty gives the sound a dreamlike quality. Your hands ache now. The gloves are not enough. Cold has entered through the fingertips and settled near the knuckles. Your cheeks feel stiff. Snow has collected along your shoulders and hat brim. When you turn your head, powder slides down your collar with cruel precision. You decide to return. This decision feels wise, which is pleasant, since wisdom and retreat often wear the same coat. The building you left is not far, yet finding it takes care. Doorways look alike. Railings vanish and reappear. The air is thick with moving white. You count steps, then lose count. For a moment, you are unsure. The street has folded itself into sameness. A stoop appears, but the door is wrong. A basement railing shows, then disappears. You pause beside a lamppost, one hand against its icy iron, and breathe slowly. Panic would be understandable, but not useful. The lamp vibrates in the wind, humming faintly through your glove. Then you smell soup. It is faint, but real. Onion, broth, pepper, and warm kitchen air leaking from a familiar doorway. You turn toward it, following the scent as if it were a lantern. A dark shape forms through the white. The stoop rail emerges. The entrance appears, half blocked by snow, blessedly ordinary. The door opens before you knock. Someone has been watching. Hands pull you inside, and the storm is shut out with a heavy thud. The hallway seems almost hot, though it is not. Snow drops from your coat in clumps. Your ears ring in the sudden reduction of sound. The landlady makes a noise that is partly scolding and partly relief. You cannot argue. Your boots leave wet marks across the mat. Your fingers fumble at buttons. A cup is placed into your hands, and steam touches your face. You smell tea, coal, wool, and human nearness. Outside, the city continues to vanish. Inside, every small warmth has become enormous. You sit near the stove. The heat stings your cheeks as feeling returns. Your gloves steam on your knees. Meltwater runs from your trouser cuffs into your socks, which is deeply unpleasant and historically authentic. Around you, people ask questions quickly, then wait for answers with open faces. You tell them what you saw: the buried wagon, the struggling horse car, the newsboy, the oranges shining in the snow. The frozen mustache earns particular interest, as it should. Laughter rises, then fades into a thoughtful quiet. Each detail becomes part of the room's map of the storm. Outside, familiar streets have become uncertain country. Inside, the story of that country begins to grow by the stove, carried in damp wool, red hands, and breath still shaking from cold. You understand now that the blizzard is not scenery. It is an event entering every doorway, touching every class, every errand, every meal, every plan. The window rattles softly. Snow presses against the lower glass. The street is only a few yards away, yet it feels distant as a polar field. You wrap both hands around the cup and let its warmth travel through you. The city has vanished in white, but within this room, New York is still speaking. Softly now, but still speaking. By late morning, the elevated railway has become the city's grandest frozen boast. You stand at an upper window, looking toward the dark iron structure that cuts above the street. It usually seems confident, almost arrogant, with trains clattering along its tracks and steam breathing over rooftops. On ordinary days, people glance up when the cars pass, annoyed by soot, noise, and shadow. Still, they rely on it. Now the railway looks stranded. The iron beams are crusted white. Snow gathers on crossbars, braces signals and stairways. The track vanishes in places beneath wind-packed drifts. A stairway entrance nearby rises from the street like a frozen ladder to nowhere. Its steps are buried unevenly, and the handrails wear sleeves of ice. A train sits motionless above the avenue. You can barely see it through the storm. Its windows show dark rectangles behind curtains of frost, and its roof carries a smooth mound of snow. Steam leaks weakly from somewhere beneath the engine, then tears away in the wind. The whole train appears to be holding its breath. It is a strange sight. New York has admired the elevated lines as proof that the city can lift itself above congestion. The first successful elevated railway service in Manhattan grew through the 1870s, and by the 1880s the system carried crowds daily. Clerks, shopgirls, brokers, shoppers, and visitors all used it to move quickly through the narrow island. Speed had become a promise. This morning that promise shivers on iron stilts. You imagine the passengers inside the halted cars. They sit in heavy coats, hats pulled low, gloves folded or clenched. Their breath clouds the windows. Some pretend to read newspapers, though the pages shake in their hands. Others stare at the white air beyond the glass, trying to judge whether walking down would be worse than waiting. A child presses his nose to the pane. His mother pulls him back gently, not because the glass is dangerous, but because cold seems to live there. The car smells of damp wool, cigar smoke, coal soot, wet leather, and human patience becoming thin. Somewhere inside, a lunch wrapped in paper gives off a faint scent of cheese. It is probably attracting philosophical attention. The conductor moves through the carriage. He speaks calmly, because his uniform requires it. The train cannot proceed until the track is cleared. The engine is struggling. Signals are uncertain. Another train may be stalled farther along the line. Nobody enjoys hearing this, but everyone understands the alternative is worse. Iron confidence has limits. The wind hits the elevated structure with a deep moan. It passes through beams and braces, making the whole framework sing in a low metallic tone. Snow spins between the tracks and falls in slanting sheets into the street below. From your window, the sound reaches you as a mixture of roar, rattle, and distant complaint. That complaint belongs to progress itself. The 19th century loves machinery, and New York loves being faster than yesterday. Railways, telegraphs, steamships, printing presses, and elevators have changed daily life. They make the city feel thrillingly connected, almost unstoppable. Then one storm arrives and asks whether all this modern cleverness brought a shovel. The answer is awkward. Workers climb the elevated stairs with tools over their shoulders. Their coats are stiff with snow. They move carefully because the steps are slick and the wind pushes hard at their backs. One man carries a shovel. Another has a broom. A third brings a lantern, though daylight still exists somewhere behind the storm. They reach the platform slowly. The platform is a narrow world of whiteness and iron. Snow is blown under the shelter and packed against benches. Posters on the walls peel beneath dampness. A ticket booth window is filmed with ice from the inside. The smell up there must be raw and metallic, sharpened by soot and frozen wood. Below, pedestrians pause to watch. People enjoy watching experts face impossible things. It's not always kind, but it is very human. The workers begin clearing the track, pushing snow aside in chunks. Each shovel load flies briefly. Then the wind grabs it and throws some back. The men lean into the work with stubborn rhythm. Their labour is dangerous. A misstep near the rail could send a person tumbling. Ice hides beneath new snow. The height makes every gust more forceful. Their fingers must ache inside gloves, and their shoulders must burn beneath wet coats. Yet the train waits, and the city expects motion to resume. A whistle shrieks faintly. The sound is thin in the storm, but everyone hears it. The engine tries to move. Steam bursts white against white, almost invisible except for its sudden force. The wheels turn, slip, catch, then grind. For one hopeful moment, the train lurches forward a few feet, then it stops again. A murmur rises from the street, half sympathy and half disappointment. Inside the train, passengers must sway against one another, then settle back with fresh irritation. Someone likely says that they could have walked faster. Someone else likely says they are welcome to try. Both are correct, which is the worst sort of argument. You feel the window frame tremble. The storm drives snow against the glass, and the building answers with tiny creaks. Your palm rests on the sill. It feels cold and gritty with blown powder. The room behind you smells of coal heat and boiled potatoes, but the view ahead belongs to another climate entirely. A messenger appears below. He is not riding. No horse could move easily there. He pushes through the snow on foot, one arm tucked inside his coat, perhaps protecting papers from the wet. His cap is pulled low. He looks up toward the railway, then down the street, then chooses a path that may or may not exist. Messages are becoming harder to move. Telegraph wires still cross the city overhead, strung in heavy webs between poles and rooftops. They are marvels of communication, carrying words faster than any horse, yet ice and wind can drag them down, and snow can bury the men needed to repair them. Modern systems depend on delicate lines, and the blizzard has a gift for finding them. Above the avenue, the wires sag. Some are coated with ice until they look thick and white. No longer nimble lines, but frozen ropes. Others vibrate in the wind with a faint, eerie humming. A few hang lower than they should, dipping toward awnings and upper windows. Everyone knows they're useful. Everyone also knows they are becoming trouble. A spark flashes somewhere down the block. It is brief, blue-white, and startling. A wire may have snapped or struck another line. People turn their heads at once. The storm swallows the sound that follows, leaving only unease. In a city increasingly threaded with cables, even the sky above the street feels crowded and risky. The railway workers keep digging. One man slips to one knee, then rises quickly with help from another. Snow clings to his trousers. He shakes his head, says something you cannot hear, and goes back to work. There is courage in this, but also wages, duty, and the strong social pressure not to be the man who quits first. A woman below watches from a doorway. She has wrapped a shawl over her head and shoulders. The wind catches its edge, snapping it against the frame. She squints up at the stalled train with a look that blends concern and judgment. Perhaps someone she loves is inside. Perhaps she only dislikes bad engineering. Both feelings are valid. New York had reasons to trust the elevated railways. They reduced travel time for many commuters and helped the city stretch northward. The stations created new routines, new neighborhoods, and new expectations. People began to imagine distance differently. A workplace miles away could become reachable, provided the machinery cooperated. This storm changes reach into separation. A man who lives uptown may be trapped downtown. A shop girl may not return to her boarding house. A doctor may find his usual route impossible. A letter may sit in a coat pocket instead of crossing town. The city is still dense, crowded, and noisy in patches, but every drift creates little islands. The train whistle sounds again. This time, it seems angrier. Steam pours out in a thick cloud, instantly shredded by wind. The wheels scrape against ice. The car body shudders. Passengers appear at windows, faces pale behind fogged glass. You cannot make out expressions, only the oval shapes of people watching their plans dissolve. The train moves another few feet, then the engine coughs. It is a pathetic sound for such a machine, like a giant clearing its throat before admitting defeat. The workers wave their arms. The conductor leans from the platform, one hand gripping the rail. Snow strikes his face. He pulls back, and the car door shuts with finality. A small cheer rises from children below. They are not cheering the failure. They are cheering the drama, because children understand spectacle before consequence. One child throws a snowball toward the elevated track, and it falls far short. His older sister cuffs his sleeve lightly. He looks proud anyway. A quirky detail comes to mind from city talk. Some passengers, when trapped by storms or delays, were said to share newspapers not only for reading, but also for warmth underfoot. Folded pages could line boots, block drafts, or protect knees from cold seats. The same sheet might carry stock prices, political insults, and then serve nobly as emergency insulation. Journalism has many duties. Inside the stalled car, newspapers may already be changing careers. You imagine a broker folding the financial page under his shoes with wounded dignity. You imagine a young woman tucking an advertisement section near a window crack. You imagine an elderly man saving the editorial page, not because it is useful, but because he intends to disagree with it properly when rescued. The thought comforts you. Even trapped people keep their habits. The talker talks, the worrier worries, the practical person finds paper, string, crumbs, and uses for all three. The dramatic person predicts doom while checking whether anyone is listening. The calm person becomes deeply popular unless they are smug about it. Historians still disagree about how much the storm changed public attitudes toward overhead urban infrastructure. Some argue the blizzard strongly encouraged burying wires and reconsidering transit planning. Others point out that reforms had many causes, including fires, crowding, politics, and business pressure. Weather rarely acts alone, even when it makes a spectacular entrance. Still, the lesson looks clear from your window. The city's nerves hang in the air. iced and vulnerable. Its proud train sits above the street, unable to command the weather. Its passengers wait inside a machine built for speed, learning the old discipline of stillness. The blizzard has not rejected modern life. It has simply asked for proof. The proof is slow. Men shovel, lamps burn, horses strain below, passengers wait, conductors confer, wires hum, snow falls, rises, turns, and falls again. Every effort matters, yet no effort seems enough by itself. The city becomes a lesson in interdependence written in iron, ice, breath, and cold smoke. Your own room feels far away though it is behind you. The warmth at your back is gentle, but the window holds your attention. A cup of tea waits on a nearby table, cooling quietly. The surface grows darker as steam fades. You pick it up and hold it near your lips, but the tea tastes of metal and tannin and distraction. Outside, the train remains still. A worker stands upright, shovel handle pressed to his chest. For a moment, he looks across the storm, not at the train, not at the street, but into the blank middle distance. His face is invisible under his cap and scarf. His posture says enough. Then he bends again. That is the city's answer. For now. Bend again. Clear another foot. Pull another rope. Light another stove. Check another door. Calm another passenger. Count another candle. It is not grand, but it is civilization in its work clothes. The wind shifts slightly. Snow that had been racing along the avenue suddenly sweeps upward around the elevated beams. The stalled train vanishes behind a thick curtain of white. For several seconds, there is no railway, no passengers, no workers, no street. Only sound remains, iron humming inside the storm. Then the outline returns. You release a breath you did not notice holding. The train is still there, buried in difficulty but visible. New York is like that too. You think, hidden, battered, absurdly proud, and not quite gone. The stove behind you clicks. Someone asks whether the railway has moved. You answer that it tried. That answer feels accurate in more ways than one. The room accepts it quietly, and the window keeps filling with snow. Above the avenue, progress waits on frozen rails, wrapped in steam, while the blizzard continues its calm and merciless work. The house begins to feel like a small village sealed inside brick. You notice it first in the hallway, where people linger longer than usual. Doors open by inches, faces appear, curious and softened by lamplight. Nobody quite admits they are lonely, worried, or eager for news. They simply step out to ask whether anyone has heard a fresh sound from the street. The answers are mostly wind. Still, the asking matters. Each question becomes a thread, drawing strangers into temporary fellowship. A man who never speaks at breakfast now discusses window putty with great seriousness. A widow from the back room offers pins to a young woman whose shawl keeps slipping. 2 children sit on the stairs, listening as adults pretend not to be frightened. The stairwell smells crowded. There's damp wool, coal smoke, boiled cabbage, shoe polish, wet rope, lamp oil, and the faint sweetness of molasses from someone's pantry shelf. Heat rises unevenly through the house, pooling near landings and disappearing near doorways. If you stand close to the wall, you feel cold seeping through the plaster like a patient animal. You return to the common room. The windows are frosted around the edges, and snow has climbed higher against the lower panes. The glass shows only shifting whiteness, but people glance at it anyway. It is hard not to look at what cannot be seen. The storm has made the outside world invisible, which of course makes everyone more interested in it. A kettle sits on the stove. It trembles gently, breathing steam through its spout. The stove itself has become an altar of iron, surrounded by chairs, stools, footrests, and people pretending they are not competing for heat. The closest seat is occupied by the oldest boarder, who appears to have claimed it by ancient law. Nobody challenges him. His hands rest on his knees. The skin is thin and spotted, the knuckles large. He wears fingerless gloves, and his nails are clean but ridged with age. He says he remembers storms from his boyhood, though none with such wind. Every elderly person in a storm is legally required to remember a worse one, but he shows unusual restraint. You sit beside the wall. It is not the warmest place, but it gives you a view of the room. The landlady moves between table and stove with brisk authority. Her apron smells of flour and smoke. She has a way of setting cups down that sounds final. In this house, she is weather, government, and quartermaster combined. A servant named Maggie carries bowls. Her sleeves are rolled above red wrists, steam beads along her forehead. Though the room is still chilly beyond the stove's reach, she's been working since before dawn, fetching coal, sweeping slush, stirring pots, and answering bells that should probably be ashamed of themselves. Storms do not reduce domestic labour. They concentrate it. She places soup before you. The bowl warms your fingers through the ceramic. It smells of onion, potato, pepper, and a little salt pork cut thin to seem more generous. The broth is cloudy and plain, but it tastes like survival pretending to be supper. You take a spoonful and feel warmth slide down slowly. Around the table, conversation drifts. One man worries about his office near the financial district. A young woman wonders whether a parcel sent by her sister can possibly arrive. A mother counts the remaining milk in a blue pitcher. The oldest boarder asks whether anyone has cards. His tone suggests civilization depends on the answer. Cards are found. They are soft at the corners and stained from years of hands. A game begins near the stove, with low voices and small accusations. The players tap cards onto the table. The sound is dry and domestic, pleasantly ordinary against the storm's deep roar. Every now and then a gust rattles the windows, and everyone pauses without meaning to. Then the game resumes. This is how people endure long hours indoors. They create rhythm where weather has removed it. Soup, cards, tea, sweeping, mending, checking the door, counting coal, telling stories, quieting children, listening for bells. The rituals are small, but they hold the room together better than speeches would. A child asks whether the snow can bury the whole house. His mother says no at once. The answer is probably correct, but she gives it too quickly. The child senses this and narrows his eyes with scientific suspicion. He asks whether it can bury the windows. She says it already has, partly. This is not her strongest moment in reassurance. The room laughs softly. The child looks pleased, having won something. In many New York households, especially in boarding houses and tenements, winter storms turned private space into shared space. Families took in stranded relatives. Lodgers gathered around common stoves, and servants slept closer to kitchens for warmth. Privacy, never abundant for many city dwellers, became a luxury wrapped in ice. You feel that loss gently. Every cough travels. Every whisper becomes possible public property. A spoon dropped in one room is discussed in another. The thin walls have become less like boundaries and more like suggestions. Even so, there is comfort in hearing others. Silence would be worse. A seamstress sits near the lamp. She has brought out a sleeve to mend, because hands dislike idleness when minds are anxious. The needle flashes in the yellow light. Her thread is dark, her fingers quick, and her posture slightly bent from years of work. The fabric makes a soft rasp as she turns it. You watch the needle move. It is calming. In and out, in and out. A small repair against a vast disorder. The storm may bury streets, halt trains, and silence wires, but a torn seam still submits to patience. There is something quietly heroic about that. Her scissors hang from a ribbon. They are shaped like a tiny stalk, beak pointed and elegant. This odd little fashion amuses you. The tool looks too delicate for the weather, yet it performs its duty without complaint. A quirky truth of domestic life is that many ordinary households owned small objects of beauty, even when money was tight. A pretty pair of scissors could brighten years of plain work. The lamp flame flickers. Its glass chimney has a smudge of soot near the top. The light gives the room a honey colour, gentle but uneven. Shadows gather in corners and beneath chairs. When someone crosses between lamp and wall, their silhouette stretches large and strange, like a tired actor in a private theatre. Outside, the storm presses harder. You hear snow rasping against the shutters. You hear the hollow thump of a drift collapsing from an awning. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks twice, then stops abruptly, perhaps reconsidering its contribution. The absence that follows is thick. Sound comes and goes in the blizzard, never fully trustworthy. The landlady checks the coal. She lifts the scuttle and frowns. Coal is the room's hidden clock, measuring time by heat instead of hands. There is enough for the evening, she says. Perhaps enough for longer, if people stop opening the door to inspect doom. Her sarcasm is dry enough to warm the place by itself. Nobody opens the door for a while. A boarder produces a harmonica. This creates immediate concern. He promises to play softly, which is dangerous promise from any musician. Yet when he begins, the tune is gentle and thin, almost shy. It bends around the room rather than filling it. The notes carry a touch of parlour song, a touch of street corner, and a touch of a homesickness no one names. The children become quiet, the cards slow. Maggie pauses beside the stove, one hand on a ladle. The seamstress keeps sewing, but her movements soften. Music changes air. Even a small tune can make a crowded room feel less trapped and more gathered. You lean back and listen. The chair is hard beneath you. The wall chills your shoulder through coat and shirt. The soup settles warmly in your stomach. Your eyelids grow heavy, though the day is not finished. Storms tire the body even indoors, because listening can become a kind of labour. A story begins after the tune. The oldest boarder tells of a winter when milk froze in bottles before delivery. Another person says bottles are modern extravagance, and proper milk comes in cans from a man who may or may not water it down. This leads to a debate about honesty in the dairy trade. The blizzard waits politely outside, apparently interested. Someone mentions frozen laundry. In cold weather, sheets hung outside can stiffen into pale boards. A woman says she once carried frozen shirts indoors like pieces of tin. Another claims her aunt could stand a frozen petticoat upright by the stove. The children are delighted. Adults, too, enjoy domestic absurdity when danger is near. The storm has shrunk the world to textures, wool against skin, warm ceramic under palms, soup steam on lips, coal dust beneath fingernails, wet hems against ankles, paper softening near a window crack, frost roughening glass, a chair's wooden edge pressing into the back of your legs. The body understands history through such small evidence. You turn your cup slowly. Tea leaves cling to the bottom in a dark crescent. Some people read fortunes from leaves, and someone suggests trying it. The landlady says the only fortune in this house is that no one has yet broken a cup. This is accepted as practical wisdom. Still, the young woman with the parcel turns her cup and peers inside. She says she sees a ship. The salesman says it looks more like a turnip. This is unfair, but not entirely false. Laughter returns, warmer now, less nervous than earlier. The ship becomes a turnip, then a whale, then a mayor, depending on who examines it. The young woman finally declares it a sign that her sister is thinking of her. Nobody argues. Hope has many shapes. A scholarly uncertainty lingers beneath such moments. Historians often debate how ordinary people experience famous disasters because official records preserve numbers, routes, damages, and decisions more easily than feelings. Diaries, letters, and newspaper interviews help, but they capture fragments. The inner life of a crowded room remains partly unknowable, yet you can sense it here. Fear does not fill every minute, neither does bravery. Mostly there is waiting, hunger, practical effort, irritation, warmth, boredom, tenderness, and jokes that would not survive better weather. A disaster is not one emotion stretched across hours. It is many small moods moving through the same cold room. Evening gathers behind the snow. The light outside fades without ever having truly arrived. Lamps are adjusted. More coal is added. The stove glows through narrow seams, red as a hidden sunset. Shadows deepen under the table, where boots stand in rows, drying badly and smelling worse. Maggie brings more soup. She eats standing near the kitchen door until the landlady tells her to sit. She hesitates, then takes a chair at the edge of the room. No one makes a grand speech about equality. The storm has simply rearranged manners a little. Warmth is easier to share when everyone can hear the wind. You notice her hands tremble slightly. Not from fear, perhaps, but exhaustion. She wraps them around the bowl and lowers her face toward the steam. For a moment she looks younger than she seemed while working. The lamplight catches loose hairs near her cheek. She breathes in slowly, eyes closed. The room softens around her. Nobody says anything sentimental, that would spoil it. Instead, the card players lower their voices. The child stops tapping a spoon. The harmonica rests silent on the table. Outside, snow continues to pour itself against the city, but inside, a tired servant is allowed one quiet bowl of soup. This, too, is history. Not only mayors, railways, storms, and statistics, but the pause between chores, the hand that passes bread, the shared pin, the old cards, the stalk scissors, the frozen window, the joke about the turnip, the warmth protected by people who may never meet again after the weather clears. The stove settles with a low click. You feel drowsiness return, not the deep sleep of night, but the gentle heaviness of being warm while danger stays outside. The room hums with breath, whispers, spoons, and the faint sigh of coal. The blizzard has made neighbours of strangers behind frosted glass. For now, that is enough. The first sign of silence is not silence at all. It is confusion. A man comes in from the entry with snow in his beard and a letter in his hand. He has not gone far, only to the corner box, only far enough to learn that distance has become rude. His coat is plastered white on one side, as if the storm has leaned against him. He stamps his boots and looks around the room with a helpless frown. The letter cannot be sent. That simple fact changes the air. The envelope looks ordinary, cream-coloured, neatly addressed, sealed with care. Perhaps it holds business news, perhaps family worry, perhaps love disguised as sensible language. In normal weather, it would vanish into the city's machinery and travel onward. Now it remains in his hand, suddenly heavy. He lays it on the mantel. No one comments at first. The storm outside has already blocked streets and halted wheels. But the failure of messages feels different. Roads carry bodies. Telegraph lines carry thought. Mail carries affection, duty, money, apology, permission, and news. When communication stops, the city becomes not merely trapped, but uncertain about itself. You notice the room listening harder. The wind still roars around the building. Snow still taps and hisses against the windows. Coal still shifts in the stove with small collapses. Yet beneath those sounds, a new absence opens. No messengers knock. No paper boy shouting clearly. No telegraph boy arriving with an envelope. No reliable word from beyond the white walls. News has become trapped indoors too. A clerk unfolds an old newspaper again, though everyone knows it contains yesterday's world. He smooths it on his knee and reads scraps aloud, as if repetition might turn old ink into fresh intelligence. Shipping notices, theatre listings, a small advertisement for patent cough syrup, a report about politics that now feels impossibly far away. Nobody is satisfied. A city like New York feeds on updates. By the 1880s, newspapers compete fiercely. Telegraph networks bring reports across distances, and businesses expect quick communication. Brokers watch prices, merchants track shipments, families await arrivals, offices depend on instructions moving faster than feet. The city's nervous system is made of paper, wire, bells, boys, and impatience. The blizzard has found every nerve outside. Telegraph wires hang over the street in thick, icy loops. Some sag under the weight of frozen snow. Others have snapped and fallen into drifts, where they lie like black threads in white cloth. Poles lean at uneasy angles. Crossarms creak. The wind plucks the wires and draws from them a low, eerie music. You hear it when the room quiets. A humming comes from somewhere above the street. Faint at first, then rising as gusts strengthen. It is not a melody. It is more like a warning remembered by metal. The children ask what makes the sound. Someone says the wires are singing. Someone else says they are complaining. Both seem reasonable. A woman near the lamp worries about her brother in Brooklyn. The river might as well be an ocean now. Ferries may be struggling, and even if one crosses, reaching either landing could be impossible. She rubs her thumb along the handle of her cup. The motion is small and constant, like a clock made of anxiety. Brooklyn feels distant. Jersey City feels distant. Harlem feels distant. A shop 2 avenues away feels distant. Snow has redrawn the map without asking permission. The telephone exists in some places, still new enough to feel almost magical, but it is not yet a universal household comfort. For many people, communication still means walking, writing, or sending someone else into the weather, that someone else may not arrive. A young telegraph messenger is mentioned, a boy named Samuel who often brings envelopes to the house. He has quick feet and a serious face, and he refuses coffee because he claims it makes him think too quickly. The landlady says he is probably safe indoors somewhere. Her voice is firm, her eyes are not. The room accepts the lie kindly. Certain lies are forms of shelter. You move closer to the window and part the curtain with 2 fingers. The cold strikes your knuckles at once. Outside, the street has lost its edges again, but overhead you can see shapes through the storm. A pole stands across the way, its wires pulled into low arcs by ice. Snow clings to every line, thickening them until they no longer look capable of carrying anything invisible. A scrap of paper flies past. It spins wildly, then slaps against the glass. For a second you see ink blurred by wetness, perhaps part of a handbill or notice. Then the wind rips it away. The room behind you smells of lamp oil, soup, and damp clothing, but the window smells of cold dust and frozen air. You let the curtain fall. Inside, people begin telling message stories. A salesman says a telegram once ruined his breakfast by announcing a shipment mistake in Albany. The seamstress says she once received a letter 6 months late, by which time the apology inside had become almost decorative. The old boarder says letters are better late, because they give people time to become less foolish. This is received with respect. A quirky tidbit follows from him, delivered with great ceremony. He claims some people used to write lines both horizontally and vertically on a single sheet to save postage, creating a cross-hatched letter that looked like a spider had become emotional. Several listeners laugh, though a few nod in recognition. Paper, like heat and bread, could be carefully rationed. The idea lingers. Words once crowded together to save money. Now words cannot travel at all. The man's unsent letter on the mantel seems to absorb attention. Its sealed flap catches lamplight. The handwriting is clean and slanted, the address written with confidence that now feels almost touching. You wonder whom it seeks. A mother, a creditor, a sweetheart, an employer. The envelope refuses to confess, it simply waits, neat and useless. While the storm handles all appointments, the landlady asks whether anyone can mend a torn curtain. Practical life pushes through worry. The curtain near the kitchen door has ripped where someone pulled it too hard. Cold slips through the gap, small but persistent. The seamstress sets down her cup, takes needle and thread, and begins to repair the tear. Communication may fail across the city, but fabric still accepts conversation with a needle. You watch her work again. The thread passes through cloth with a tiny whisper. Around her, talk settles into lower tones. A spoon scrapes a bowl. A chair leg creaks. The stove exhales heat. The house has become a pocket of sound inside a larger muteness, and each indoor noise feels strangely precious. Then comes a knock. Everyone turns. It is not loud, just 3 dull blows against the outer door, softened by snow. For one breath, nobody moves. Another knock follows, more urgent. The landlady lifts her chin and points to 2 men, who rise at once. Together they shoulder the door inward against the drift. A shape stumbles inside. It is a messenger, though not Samuel. This boy is older, perhaps 16, with a red scarf frozen stiff near his chin. His cap is crusted white, and his eyelashes glitter with ice. He carries no tidy envelope now, only a leather satchel under his coat. Snow falls from him in clumps onto the mat. The cold enters with him. The lamps flicker, the hallway fills with raw air, sharp as broken glass. The door is forced shut again, and someone kicks snow away from the threshold. The boy leans against the wall, breathing hard. His face is pale beneath the windburn. He has lost his route. He was carrying messages from a nearby office. Then wires failed. Then streets disappeared. Then a policeman told him to get indoors. He says this in fragments, between breaths. His voice is hoarse. The satchel holds several telegram forms, damp at the edges. None are for this house. Still, the room receives him. A chair is pulled close to the stove. His gloves are eased from his hands. His fingers are red and stiff, and he winces as warmth returns. A cup of hot tea is placed before him. Someone adds sugar without asking, because this is not a moment for principles. The boy drinks slowly. Steam touches his face. His shoulders begin to lower. He smells of snow, wet leather, cold wool, and the faint chemical tang of telegraph offices. The room studies him with the hunger people have for news, yet what he brings is mostly absence. Wires down, streets blocked, messages delayed, offices crowded, men trying to repair lines when the wind lets them stand. The facts are plain. They're also enormous. New York's telegraph system, with its overhead wires, was vulnerable to this kind of storm. Heavy ice and fierce wind could snap lines and topple poles. The disruption helped strengthen arguments for placing more wires underground. The reforms would take time, money, politics, and many practical quarrels. Cities rarely learn gracefully. They usually negotiate with inconvenience first. The messenger warms his hands. He says one pole fell near a corner and dragged several wires low across the street. A horse refused to pass. Sensible animal. A policeman waved people away while a repair crew argued about whether the line was dead. Nobody wished to test the matter personally. A nervous laugh moves through the room. Electricity still carries an aura of mystery for many people. Telegraph wires are familiar, but not entirely friendly. They belong to offices, operators, companies, and invisible speech. When they fall into snow, they seem like a spell broken across the street. The boy says operators kept tapping even as reports failed. You imagine them in crowded offices, sleeves rolled, ears trained to sounders, Fingers poised over keys, messages come in fragments, then cease. A station calls another station and receives nothing. A clerk writes partial words, waits, then scratches a line across the page. Outside, wires sway like frozen vines. The world narrows to clicks. Then even clicks are gone. In the common room, the old boarder asks whether the messenger knows anything from uptown. The boy shakes his head. The woman with the brother asks about Brooklyn. Another shake. The clerk asks about the financial district, then regrets how selfish it sounds. The boy can answer none of them. His ignorance is not failure. It is the weather made human. A hush follows, not hopeless, but deep. Each person must sit with a private uncertainty. A brother across water, a workplace across town, a parcel in transit, a debt unpaid, a child at school, a train expected, a letter unsent. The storm has not only buried streets, it has placed question marks in every chair. You feel one inside yourself. It has no clear object, only a shape. The feeling of being cut off is older than telegraphs, older than cities, older than snowbound rooms. Human beings have always listened for word from beyond the hill, beyond the river, beyond the sea, beyond the storm. Silence enters the mind and starts furnishing it. The landlady breaks the spell. She tells the messenger he may stay until he can safely leave. She says it as though offering shelter is merely good management. He nods, too tired for gratitude that would satisfy a novelist. Maggie brings him more soup, and he accepts with both hands. The room resumes breathing. Cards are gathered, though the game does not restart. The seamstress finishes the curtain. The woman with the brother sits nearer the stove. The clerk folds the old newspaper carefully, respecting its uselessness. The unsent letter remains on the mantel, no longer alone. The messenger's damp satchel rests beside it. 2 carriers of words, halted. Outside, the wire hum rises again. You close your eyes and listen. The sound threads through wind, through walls, through warm air and lamp smoke. It seems almost like speech, yet it says nothing you can understand. Perhaps that is why it feels so intimate. The city is trying to speak through ice, and the storm keeps interrupting. Historians continue to debate how much disasters reveal social truth, and how much they create temporary exceptions. Did people become kinder, or merely more dependent? Did class boundaries soften, or only bend under pressure? The records offer hints, but not full answers. In this room, the question feels less abstract. A messenger is eating soup beside strangers. That is enough evidence for tonight. The lamps burn lower. Someone trims a wick, and the flame steadies with a soft golden edge. The smell of oil sharpens, then fades. Shadows settle back into corners. The messenger's eyes droop. The woman near the stove whispers something like a prayer, too quiet for anyone to examine. You look once more at the mantel. The letter lies under lamplight, patient and sealed. It cannot cross town, not yet. It cannot soothe, warn, promise, or explain. But it exists. The words inside are still there, waiting for the city to reconnect itself. That thought comforts you more than expected. Outside, Gwers sag beneath ice. Inside, people pass bowls, mend cloth, share rumours, and make room for a half-frozen boy with a satchel full of delayed messages. The city's nervous system has faltered, but its smaller heartbeats continue. Spoon against bowl, coal in the grate, breath in the chest, a knock answered in the snow. You listen to those heartbeats. They are slow, human, and warm. By the second night, hunger becomes more imaginative than dramatic. It doesn't arrive as grand misery. It comes as counting. You watch the landlady count loaves, potatoes, onions, candles, coal buckets, and spoons, as though spoons may become food if properly supervised. She writes figures on a scrap of paper, frowns, then turns the paper over and writes again. The numbers do not improve. A loaf rests on the table beneath a cloth. Its crust is hardening at the edges, and its warm life from the bakery is long gone. Still, when Maggie lifts the cloth, everyone looks at it with quiet interest. Bread has become more than bread. It is breakfast, comfort, fairness, and a small test of manners. Slices are cut thin. The knife moves with careful authority. Each piece falls flat onto a plate, pale inside and dark at the crust. No one complains, because complaining at bread is a poor use of civilization. Butter appears in a little dish, reduced to a golden smear. It is passed around with a seriousness usually reserved for legal documents. You take less than you want. So does everyone else, or nearly everyone. The oldest boarder examines the butter, sighs theatrically, and spreads it with such restraint that the children stare in wonder. He says he's making a map of Greenland. The smear on his bread does look northern and chilly. The children approve. The joke helps the rationing. Coal matters even more. You hear it before you see it. The scrape of the scuttle across the floor, the hollow clink of lumps shifting inside. Coal dust blackens the handle and leaves a smudge on Maggie's wrist. The smell rises dry and mineral, with a faint underground bitterness. Every piece dropped into the stove is a promise, but also a subtraction. The stove accepts its offerings. Its belly glows red behind the grate. Heat pulses outward, making nearby faces amber and shadowed. Farther from the stove, the room remains cold enough for breath to show near the window. The house has become a geography of warmth. Chairs migrate by inches, like slow wooden animals seeking a kinder climate. Candles are counted too. Some are white, some yellowed, some bent from poor storage. A few have already burned low, with thick pools of wax at their bases. Lamps provide better light, but oil is not endless either. The landlady decides that one lamp will serve the common room, and candles will be used only when necessary. Necessary becomes a negotiable word. A child says reading is necessary. His mother says sleeping is necessary. The old boarder says card games are necessary for mental preservation. The landlady says preserving oil is necessary if people wish to avoid sitting in darkness like potatoes in a cellar. This argument is difficult to defeat. The lamp is lowered. The room becomes softer, less exact. Faces appear in warm fragments. A cheek, a brow, a hand around a cup, a needle flashing briefly, the rim of a bowl. Shadows deepen beneath the table. The storm outside turns the windows into blind. Pale squares. You feel time slowing. The city's usual schedule is faded. Clocks still tick, but they no longer command much. Meals happen when there is food and heat. Sleep happens when worry loosens. Work happens if it can be done indoors. Waiting fills the spaces between. Not empty waiting, but textured waiting. Full of small chores and smaller thoughts. Someone asks about milk. There is little left. The pitcher, once ordinary, now seems almost ceremonial. The remaining milk smells sweet but faintly tired. It is saved for the children, tea, and one invalid upstairs with a cough that has become a household concern. Even people who have not met him lower their voices when his cough sounds through the ceiling. This is how shortage teaches attention. A cough matters, a candle matters, a spoonful of milk matters, a coal lump matters, a dry pair of socks matters immensely, and anyone saying otherwise has never had wet wool around their toes at night. You shift your feet near the stove, feeling heat soak through the leather slowly. Your socks are still damp. History is sometimes wet socks. The evening meal becomes a stew of negotiation. Potatoes are peeled thinly, because thick peels feel like waste. Onions are trimmed closely. A few scraps of salt pork are diced so small they nearly become rumour. The pot receives everything with a soft splash, and soon steam rises in fragrant clouds. The smell changes the room. At first, it is sharp onion, then earthier potato, then the smoky, salty note of pork. Pepper follows, dry and warming. The smell clings to curtains and coats, and everyone pretends not to be waiting for supper. Spoons are set out early. Bowls are warmed near the stove. Maggie stirs the pot. Her ladle moves slowly, scraping the bottom with a wooden murmur. She tastes, considers, adds salt, then looks immediately guilty for using it. The landlady waves this away. Unsalted stew, she says, is sadness with vegetables. Nobody argues, because wisdom sometimes arrives wearing an apron. Outside, something crashes. The whole room stiffens. It may be a signboard, an awning, a branch, or a piece of guttering. The sound comes once, heavy and dull, then vanishes into wind. No one moves toward the door. Curiosity has become less athletic. The crash belongs to the storm now, and the storm is not taking visitors. The stew is served. You receive a bowl and hold it carefully. Heat spreads through the ceramic into your palms. The first spoonful is plain, salty, soft, and magnificent. Potato breaks against your tongue. Onion sweetness lingers. A piece of pork appears unexpectedly, tiny but rich, like a wealthy relative making a brief appearance at a humble gathering. You eat slowly, not because you're not hungry, because the bowl must last. Around you, spoons move with similar discipline. The children are reminded twice to slow down. One child begins counting potato pieces, then is told that mathematics has no place at supper. This seems unfair, but effective. Bread follows in small pieces. People dip it into the stew to catch every drop. The old boarder uses his crust with reverence, chasing broth around the bowl until the ceramic shines. He says a clean bowl is a compliment to the cook. Maggie hides a smile and pretends to inspect the stove. The meal quiets everyone. Warm food changes the body quickly. Shoulders lower, voices soften. The wind remains fierce, but it no longer owns the room completely. Candlelight glows against the bowls. The air smells of broth, coal, and damp garments drying too close to heat. A scholarly uncertainty rises in such ordinary scenes. Historians often struggle to know exactly how households divided scarce supplies during disasters, because ledgers and newspapers rarely record the private ethics of a dinner table. Some families may have shared carefully, others may have protected their own. Most likely, the truth changed from room to room. In this room, fairness is visible. Not perfect, of course. Fairness rarely enters wearing polished shoes. It limps in through habit, shame, kindness, authority, and watchful eyes. The landlady controls portions. Maggie knows who has eaten. Mothers protect children. Strangers perform generosity because others can see them. The result is not saintliness. It is order with a pulse. The telegraph messenger falls asleep in his chair. His empty bowl rests near his boots. His head tips sideways, and his scarf has loosened enough to show a raw red mark beneath his chin. Someone drapes a shawl over his shoulders without waking him. He breathes deeply, almost childlike now, despite his satchel and city errands. You look at the candles. Their flames lean whenever the wind finds cracks in the house. Wax softens and trails downward in uneven lines. One candle near the mantel has formed a strange curled lip, like a frozen wave. A child says it looks like a snail. The old boarder says it looks like the mayor addressing the public. Both interpretations are unkind to someone. The room enjoys this too much. Quirky winter habits return in conversation. Someone says that in bitter weather. People sometimes placed heated bricks at the foot of the bed, wrapped in flannel to prevent burns. Another adds that a brick could be trusted more than a husband, because it stayed where placed. The women laugh first. The men decide not to investigate the remark. You imagine the brick, warm, heavy, wrapped in cloth. holding heat beneath blankets while snow presses at windows. It is a humble object, but humble objects rule cold nights. Matches, socks, pins, kettles, rags, door latches, coal shovels, soup bones, and bricks. Disasters elevate the ordinary until it looks almost noble. The landlady sends people to inspect rooms. No door is to be left open. No lamp is to burn unattended. No one is to waste matches, coal, oil, patience, or common sense. Her list grows as she speaks. It might continue into spring if nobody interrupts. Fortunately, someone asks about tea. Tea is granted. Weak tea, but still tea. The leaves have already given much of themselves. The brew is pale brown, slightly bitter, and precious because it is hot. You hold the cup beneath your nose and breathe in steam. It smells tannic, smoky, and faintly medicinal. Warmth touches your lips before taste arrives. The invalid upstairs coughs again. Maggie prepares a cup with extra milk and carries it upward. The stair treads creak beneath her careful steps. Everyone listens without quite admitting it. The cough stops. A door opens above, then closes. When Maggie returns, she says he is sleeping. The room receives this as good news from a distant country. Outside, coal carts cannot move easily. Deliveries across the city have stalled in buried streets. Horses need cleared paths, drivers need visibility, and sellers need access through snowed-in doors. Without coal, a household's warmth declines fast. In poor neighbourhoods, this can become dangerous within hours, especially for infants, the elderly, and the ill. You feel the privilege of heat, not guilt exactly, though perhaps some of that. More a quiet awareness that comfort has walls, fuel, labour, and luck beneath it. The stove's glow is not just cosy atmosphere, it is infrastructure made visible. Someone mined coal, someone hauled it, someone stored it, someone carried it up and fed it to iron. The flame is never alone. A candle gutters near the window and nearly goes out. You cup your hand around it, protecting the small light from a draught. The flame steadies, blue at the base and gold above. Heat kisses your palm, delicate and immediate. For a moment, your whole attention narrows to keeping one flame alive. That feels strangely important. When the candle holds, you lean back. The small success warms your mood beyond reason. Outside, snow can bury carts and silence offices, but here a little flame still stands upright. It is ridiculous to feel proud of fire. Human beings have been doing so for a very long time. The night grows deeper. People begin preparing for bed, though bed is more a plan than a place of comfort. Extra blankets are distributed. Shawls become coverlets. Coats are folded over knees. Chairs are arranged for anyone staying near the stove. The messenger is allowed to sleep in the common room, close to the heat, with his satchel tucked under his chair. You help carry a candle down the hall. The flame trembles inside its little circle of light. The corridor smells colder than the common room, with damp plaster and old wood rising from the walls. Your fingertips brush wallpaper, and it feels dry in some places, clammy in others. Behind closed doors, people murmur, cough, settle, and pray. Your room is dim and cold. The bed waits under its blankets, looking both inviting and insufficient. You place the candle on the washstand. Its light touches the pitcher, the chair, the folded coat, the frost at the window. The water in the basin has chilled again. You decide cleanliness can wait, a conclusion reached by many respectable people in winter. You undress quickly. Cold air grips your shoulders. The blanket receives you with scratchy mercy. At your feet, someone has placed a wrapped warm brick. You laugh softly when you find it. The brick is heavy, blessed, and entirely lacking in conversation. It may be the finest companion in New York tonight. Your toes meet warmth. A sigh leaves you before you choose it. From below, you hear the stove being tended one last time. Coal falls with a muted clatter, a door shuts, footsteps recede. Wind continues its endless work outside, rubbing snow against brick, dragging ice across wires, piling drifts over streets where bread, coal, and letters wait to move again. Inside, supplies are counted and guarded, yet something else has multiplied. Not food, not fuel, not candles. Attention has grown. People notice who shivers, who's not eaten, whose hands shake, whose cough worsens, whose candle needs shelter. The blizzard has made the city smaller, and in this smallness, care becomes easier to see. You close your eyes. The brick warms your feet. The blanket scratches your chin. The room smells of wax, wool, cold glass, and faint soup carried in from your clothing. Hunger has not vanished, but it has softened. The dark is not complete, because one candle still holds beside the bed. Its flame leans, straightens, and glows. Morning arrives with a quieter kind of astonishment. The wind has weakened enough for the house to hear itself again. Floorboards creak, pipes knock. Someone coughs behind a closed door. A spoon drops in the kitchen, and the sound travels through the building with almost comic importance. The great roar has lowered to a tired mutter outside the windows. You rise slowly. The room is blue with cold light. Frost has thickened over the lower glass, but the upper panes show a pale sky bruised with cloud. The candle has burned down into a waxy stump. The brick at your feet has cooled, becoming once more a plain object with no heroic qualities whatsoever. Your first breath feels sharp. The blanket resists letting you go, which is understandable. Still, the house is stirring, and so is the city beyond it. You dress in layers, pulling wool over linen, then coat over vest, then scarf around neck. Each garment carries the stale warmth of indoor survival. Your boots remain stiff, but they accept your feet after a brief argument. Downstairs, the common room looks altered. People have slept in chairs and on benches near the stove. Blankets hang over shoulders. Hair has escaped pins. Collars are crushed. Faces appear puffy, softened by interrupted sleep and lamplight. The telegraph messenger wakes with a start, clutching his satchel before remembering where he is. The stove still lives. Its glow is lower, but steady. The room smells of banked coal, old soup, wool, candle smoke, and morning breath. A kettle warms slowly on top, not yet whistling. The landlady stands at the window, arms folded, looking out with the expression of a general inspecting a battlefield and questioning her staff. You join her there. Someone has cleared a small patch of glass with a cloth. Through it, the street appears in a new form, almost sculptural. Snow lies in walls and ridges, some higher than a man's shoulder. Doorways are half-sealed. Railings vanish under smooth white caps. The abandoned wagon is now merely a swelling beneath the drift, a suggestion with a wheel. The city has become topography, a street that was once a channel for horses, carts, pedestrians, and streetcars is now a valley of compacted snow. The storm has built hills where crossings should be, dunes against houses, and trenches where the wind carved narrow passages. It is beautiful, inconvenient, and deeply rude. People begin digging. At first, they appear as dark shapes emerging from doorways. One man attacks the drift before his stoop with a cold shovel. Another uses a board. A woman sweeps powder from a window ledge with a broom, then looks down at the greater white mass below and visibly revises her ambitions. A boy climbs onto a drift and immediately sinks to his waist. The street laughs at him, not loudly. Everyone is too tired for cruelty. A few voices call advice. He wriggles free, red-faced and grinning, while his mother points him toward a shovel with no ceremony. Childhood ends briefly in storms, then resumes when nobody is looking. You go outside with the others. The door must be forced inward again, then cleared along the bottom. Cold air enters, cleaner now, less violent but still severe. The smell outside is bright snow, coal smoke, damp wood, and the faint sourness of buried street filth beginning to remind everyone that beauty has layers. Your boots step into a trench someone began before breakfast. The snow squeaks underfoot. It is packed hard near the doorway where then he softens suddenly beside the wall. Your shovel bites into it with a dry crunch. You lift and throw the first load aside. It is heavier than it looks. The second load is worse, because optimism has left. By the fifth, your shoulders have developed political opinions. Digging becomes rhythm. Cut, lift, turn, throw, breathe. Cut, lift, turn, throw, breathe. Your gloves grow wet at the palms. Snow grains creep into your cuffs. Your back warms beneath your coat while your face stays cold. The air tastes metallic, clean, and slightly smoky when you breathe through your mouth. Neighbours work in parallel. No one has appointed a committee, which is a mercy. The job explains itself. Open the door, clear the stoop, make a path to the next house, join that path to another, find the curb, locate the street under this white nonsense, discover, if possible, where the city has gone. A man across the way finds a buried fence. He discovers it with his shin and a sound of restrained agony. Everyone pretends not to hear, because dignity deserves privacy when injured by iron. He leans on his shovel, breathing through his nose, then resumes work with a personal hatred of fences that feels newly philosophical. A small tunnel begins. It is not quite a tunnel at first, more a trench between walls of snow. People walk through it sideways, carrying buckets, messages, and questions. The sides are high enough to muffle sound. When you step inside, the city above seems distant. The snow wall beside your shoulder is layered, white and grey, with bits of soot trapped inside like dark specks in sugar. You run a gloved hand along it. The surface is cold, grainy, and firm where wind has packed it. It sheds powder at your touch. Beneath the top layer, the snow is dense and faintly blue. There is a beauty in it that feels almost unfair. Disaster should not get to decorate itself so well. Work crews appear farther down. Men hired by railways, businesses, and city departments begin cutting passages through streets and around tracks. Some carry proper shovels, others have picks, brooms, ropes, or improvised scrapers. Horses, when they can be brought out, struggle to pull ploughs or sledges through the drifts. Their breath rises in exhausted white clouds. The horses look offended. One stands with snow clinging to its mane, ears flicking under a blanket. Its driver pats its neck and speaks softly. Perhaps apology, perhaps negotiation. The animal shifts, harness bells barely sounding under layers of ice, in a city powered by muscle as much as steam. Horses are not background. They are labour, transport, wealth, and vulnerability. A mainstream fact becomes visible everywhere. The blizzard forced New York to reckon with the limits of surface transit and overhead systems. Roads, horse-car tracks, elevated lines, wires, and ferry approaches all suffered from snow and ice. The city didn't stop because one thing failed. It struggled because many connected things failed together. You see connection in the digging. A shopkeeper clears his entrance so customers may one day return. A neighbour helps because the cleared snow blocks her cellar door. A boy carries hot coffee to men opening a path toward the corner. A policeman directs people away from a sagging wire. A grocer digs toward his storeroom, guarded by hunger and capitalism in equal measure. The grocer's shutters finally open. A little cheer rises from nearby workers. He lifts the bar, pushes one shutter out, then the other. Inside, shelves sit in dim order, smelling of coffee beans, flour, dried apples, soap, kerosene, vinegar, onions, and wooden crates. The smell pours into the cold air like news from a working world. People gather quickly. The grocer raises both hands and announces that no one will trample his floor like cattle. This is not the most poetic reopening speech, but it is effective. Orders are taken at the door: flour, crackers, beans, coffee, candles, and lamp oil become urgent desires. Money changes hands with gloved awkwardness. A woman asked for yeast. The grocer sighs and says yeast has not arrived. She receives this as if he is personally disappointed bread itself. Another customer asks for eggs, and several people laugh before the grocer can answer. Fresh eggs seem like a fantasy from a warmer civilization. Still, goods move. A sack of flour is passed hand to hand along the trench. A packet of candles travels beneath coats to keep dry. Coffee is guarded like treasure. Each item becomes part of the city's slow return. Not triumphant, just practical. Survival often looks like people refusing to drop beans in the snow. You help carry coal. A delivery cannot reach the house, but a nearby cellar has some available for purchase. The coal is shoveled into sacks, dark lumps clattering against rough cloth. Black dust coats your gloves and settles into the creases near your nails. The sack is heavy against your shoulder, and its gritty edge presses through your coat. Coal has a smell of deep earth. It is not pleasant exactly, but today it smells like continuation. Each lump means another hour of heat, another kettle, another night not entirely surrendered to cold. You move through the trench, boots sliding, breath hard, while the sack knocks against your back. A quirky sight waits at the corner. Someone has placed a wooden sign into a drift, painted hastily with the words, Broadway. Probably. The lettering wobbles, and the final word has almost run. People stop to admire it. In a city famous for confidence, the probably feels refreshingly honest. Even geography seems to be making a cautious statement. Laughter travels along the trench. It echoes softly between snow walls. The sound is different now, less trapped than indoor laughter, more open, though still muffled. You feel it in your chest. It does not erase exhaustion, but it gives the shovels a little courage. At a crossing, men dig downward to find rails. The streetcar track lies buried under feet of snow and ice. Picks strike hard layers with dull metallic shocks. When iron is finally reached, someone calls out as if discovering buried treasure. The rail glints darkly under slush. It looks less like progress than archaeology. A man jokes that the city is ancient now. Another says New York has always behaved that way. Historians still debate how directly the blizzard influenced later underground transit planning. Many accounts emphasize the storm's role in encouraging subways, buried wires, and stronger municipal systems. Other scholars note that population growth, congestion, engineering ambition, and business pressure were already pushing the city in that direction. The snow did not invent those ideas. It made them harder to ignore. The shovel in your hands agrees. Every lifted load argues for better planning. Every stalled cart supports buried systems. Every stranded passenger becomes evidence. But evidence does not pass laws by itself. People must argue, fund, design, approve, delay, redesign, and argue again. Even disaster has to attend meetings, which feels unfair to everyone involved. By midday, paths connect several houses. The trench network gives people a sense of achievement. You can walk from the boarding house to the grocer, then to the corner, then halfway toward the avenue. The walls rise beside you like frozen corridors. Above them, upper windows open, and faces appear to call down requests, jokes, warnings, and entirely unnecessary advice. One woman lowers a basket. It descends by rope from a second-floor window, swaying in the cold air. Inside is a coin purse and a list. The grocer reads the list and shakes his head at some items, nods at others. The basket returns with candles, crackers, and coffee wrapped in paper. This inspires immediate envy and several new baskets. Soon the street resembles a strange market. Ropes creak. Baskets swing. People call upward and downward. Snow walls shine under grey light. Boots stamp. Shovels scrape. A dog appears in one trench, trots importantly through it, and vanishes into another as though supervising municipal recovery. No one knows where it came from. The dog looks extremely employed. You pause to rest. Your arms ache. Your lower back complains. Your gloves are soaked and blackened with coal dust at the fingertips. You lean against a snow wall and feel cold seep through your coat. Yet you are warmer than when standing still indoors, because labour has lit a furnace inside your ribs. The city smells awake. Not healthy, not exactly. Awake. Coal smoke thickens as more stoves burn. Horses return to the air with manure and hay. Coffee steams from cups carried outside. Wet wool gives off its loyal, sour scent. Beneath the clean snow lies the old city, damp and stubborn, beginning to breathe again. A bell rings faintly. This time it sounds clearer. Perhaps a church. Perhaps a firehouse. Perhaps a signal from men clearing a line. The note moves across the altered streets, touching faces turned upward. It is only a sound, but everyone hears structure in it. Somewhere, something is functioning. That matters. You return to the house with coal and news. The door opens and warmth folds around you. People gather as you describe the grocer, the trenches, the buried rail, the sign that says Broadway probably. The children demand every detail about the supervising dog. Maggie takes the coal sack with a look of reverence normally reserved for saints or fresh pie. The stove receives new fuel. Black lumps tumble into the iron belly. Flames lick upward, orange and hungry. Heat begins to grow stronger almost at once. The room seems to expand with relief. Someone starts coffee with newly bought grounds, and the smell rises rich, bitter, and glorious. You sit exhausted. Your hands tremble slightly from work and cold. The cup placed before you is chipped at the rim, but it holds warmth beautifully. Coffee steam touches your face. Outside, shovels continue scraping, paths lengthen, and the city carves itself back into view one corridor at a time. The blizzard has not ended all at once. It is being removed by inches. Stories begin gathering faster than snow can melt. They arrive with boots, baskets, shovels, and red hands pressed around cups. Each person who enters the house brings some account from the white corridors outside. Some tales are useful, some are exaggerated, some are probably true in spirit, which is how many legends enter society wearing respectable shoes. You sit near the stove and listen. The room has become an exchange, not for stocks or shipping news, but for survival stories. A man from 2 streets away claims a drift reached the 2nd floor of a building near his cousin's shop. A woman says she saw a horse lifted out of snow with ropes. A boy insists a policeman disappeared entirely into a drift and emerged wearing a different expression. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody asks too hard. The storm has created a city of witnesses, each seeing only a narrow slice. One person knows a blocked doorway. Another knows a stalled train. Another knows a silent telegraph office, a frozen stable, a bread line, a lost hat, a rescued child, a stranded nurse, a buried cart. Together, they make a patchwork map of astonishment. A newspaper finally reaches the house. It is damp, wrinkled, and already handled by many impatient fingers. The ink has blurred in places, and one corner is torn. Still, it is received almost ceremonially. The clerk smooths it on the table with both palms. People lean closer, smelling wet paper, coal smoke, and the sharp black scent of print. The headlines are read aloud. They tell of blocked trains, paralysed streets, damaged wires, and people stranded across the city. The language is dramatic because newspapers understand weather as competition. Every line seems to breathe urgency. The old boarder mutters that printers enjoy disasters more than is morally necessary. He may not be wrong, yet the printed page comforts the room. It proves that the city is still describing itself. Even if the news is incomplete, even if rumour has slipped into fact's coat, the paper gives shape to anxiety. A named trouble feels easier to hold than a blank one. You watch faces respond. Concern tightens mouths. Relief softens eyes when a district is mentioned as functioning. Laughter rises at odd human details. One report says men cut passages through drifts like miners. Another describes travellers taking shelter wherever doors opened. The city has become an underground place, except the tunnels are above ground and made of snow. Very efficient. New York. Extremely normal. A woman brings an account from a church. She says people sheltered there through the storm, wrapped in pew cushions and whatever coats could be spared. Candles burned before the altar, and snow hissed against stained glass. The air smelled of wax, wet clothing, old wood, and cold stone. Someone played the organ softly, not for ceremony, but to calm those waiting. You imagine that sound? Low notes moving through a cold nave, breath clouding faintly near hymnals, children asleep across laps, strangers whispering beside carved pews. Outside, wind scraping snow along steps where Sunday shoes usually pass. Inside, sacred space becoming practical shelter, as sacred spaces often do when weather forgets manners. Another visitor tells of a hotel lobby. Travellers stranded far from their rooms crowded near fires, sharing chairs, newspapers, and impatience. A banker slept sitting upright with his gloves still on. A theatre performer told jokes until she lost her voice. A porter made coffee so strong that one guest claimed it could remove wallpaper. Nobody asked whether this was praise. Such stories fill the afternoon. They do not repeat the same fear. They branch into the city's many lives. Hospitals working under pressure, stables crowded with restless animals, ferries delayed at icy slips, police helping people cross buried streets, workers clearing tracks while wind threw snow back into their faces, families cooking what they had, shopkeepers guarding supplies with cold fingers and colder arithmetic. A mainstream fact rises through all of it. The Great Blizzard of 1888 became a landmark event not only because of snowfall and wind, but because it exposed the fragile systems that kept urban life moving. Transit, telegraphy, food delivery, heating fuel, emergency response, and commerce all depended on access through streets. When streets vanished, modern life had to negotiate with shovels. The room understands this now. It does not need a lecture. A basket arrives from the upper floor, lowered inside the stairwell by a child who enjoys the performance too much. The basket contains socks to be dried near the stove, and a note requesting coffee if any remains. The landlady reads the note aloud, raises one eyebrow, and sends back hot water with a heroic crumb of coffee in it. This is accepted as mercy. You take a pair of socks from the basket. They are stiff with damp and cold. When placed near the stove, they give off that intimate smell of wet wool and weary feet, which history books often neglect for cowardly reasons. Everyone pretends not to notice. Everyone notices. The telegraph messenger wakes fully. He has recovered enough colour to look embarrassed by kindness. He asks whether the wires are being repaired toward his office. Nobody knows. He checks his satchel, smoothing the damp papers inside as if apologizing to them. He says messages can become meaningless if delivered late. Then he pauses. Some can, some cannot. A birth announcement remains joyful, even delayed. A condolence letter remains tender, even slow. A bill remains irritating at any speed. A warning may arrive too late to help. A love note, depending on its author, may improve by making someone wait. The old boarder says this last point with suspicious confidence. The room studies him. He smiles into his tea. A quirky rumour begins circulating near dusk. Someone says a restaurant downtown served whatever could be cooked from its remaining pantry, creating a menu of oysters, pickles, custard, and boiled potatoes. Another person insists no civilized stomach could survive that order. A third says civilization is exactly the problem with restaurant menus during blizzards. The rumour grows. By the time it reaches the children, the meal includes sardines, cake, and a goose found frozen in a doorway. No one believes this fully, but everyone enjoys it. Disaster folklore needs texture, and food supplies excellent texture. The idea of a doorway goose will likely outlive several accurate reports. Memory chooses favourites. That thought stays with you. Historians still argue over how many famous blizzard anecdotes reflect direct testimony, and how many were polished by newspapers, memoirs, and later retellings. Some dramatic details may be true, others may be arranged for effect. The difficulty is not that people lied, necessarily. It is that people remember events in the shape of meaning. The city is already making meaning. A stalled train becomes a warning about pride. A rescued messenger becomes proof of kindness. A buried street becomes evidence against overhead wires or lazy officials or weak boots. Depending on the speaker, a soup pot becomes domestic heroism, a frozen moustache becomes comedy. Because humanity needs something to laugh at while thawing. You look around the room. Every person here has become a keeper of some fragment. Maggie will remember the endless bowls, the coal dust, the boy at the door. The landlady will remember the accounting of candles and the stubborn door drift. The clerk will remember reading old news until new news finally arrived. The children will remember snow walls taller than themselves. You will remember warmth, not as a vague idea, but as objects. A stoveside glowing red, a chipped cup, a wrapped brick, a bowl heavy in both hands, a curtain stitched against draughts, a damp newspaper dried flat by the lamp. Warmth is not only temperature, it is arrangement, effort, luck, and bodies choosing not to abandon one another. Another visitor comes in. He's a doctor, exhausted, with a black bag wrapped in cloth to keep snow from the clasp. His beard is crusted white, and his coat smells of cold leather, medicine, and the bitter smoke of many hearths. He has visited patients by walking through trenches, climbing drifts, and accepting lifts from strangers with improvised sleds. He drinks standing. No one makes him sit, because he looks like sitting might finish him. He reports that many people are frightened, but more are helping than hindering. He has seen doors opened, blankets shared, and strong people carrying weak ones across impossible crossings. He has also seen foolishness, naturally, because storms do not cancel personality. This earns tired laughter. The doctor mentions that snowblindness can trouble people in bright conditions, especially when sun returns over wide white surfaces. Today's light remains grey, but glare may follow. He advises cloth over eyes if needed. The children immediately want to become explorers with face coverings. Their mother advises them to become quiet furniture instead. The doctor smiles faintly. He leaves soon, swallowed again by the street trench. The door shuts behind him, and the room seems to exhale. His presence leaves a sharper awareness of the wider city. Beyond this house, illness continues, births continue, injuries continue, old age continues, and weather has made every errand heavy. The newspaper passes from hand to hand. Its damp fibres soften more with each reader. People read not only for facts, but for names, neighbourhoods, proof of connection. A street mentioned becomes real again. A station named becomes reachable in imagination. A death reported makes the room still. A rescue described makes it breathe again. You notice how gently people hold the paper, as if rough handling might damage hope. Evening lowers itself over the snow. Outside, trenches darken into blue channels. Lamps in windows glow above snow walls, making each house look like a ship cabin seen across a frozen harbour. Voices travel strangely through the cut paths, sometimes close, sometimes distant, sometimes rising from below your feet like the city has learned ventriloquism. The smell of supper returns. This time there are beans, slow cooked until soft, with onion and a little molasses. The scent is deeper than soup, sweet and earthy, filling the room with a drowsy heaviness. Beans are not glamorous. They do not care. They have fed more history than banquets ever did. Bowls are passed. The messenger receives a larger portion after pretending not to need it. Maggie receives one too, without being made to stand. The old boarder sprinkles pepper with the elegance of a man seasoning destiny. The children eat quietly for once, tired from watching adults become interesting. The room relaxes into lamplight. Stories continue, but softer now. A woman describes lace curtains frozen into delicate folds. A man recalls seeing a cat walking along the top of a drift as though it owned the new landscape. Someone says cats always expected humans to build them higher roads. This is accepted as scholarship. The storm's legend thickens, not falsely, not entirely. Legends can hold truths that numbers cannot. The number of inches matters, the wind speed matters, the damage matters. But so does the feeling of a room becoming a refuge, a street becoming a trench, a message becoming precious, and a candle flame becoming worth guarding with your hand. You lean back. The chair supports you with its usual lack of tenderness. Your shoulders ache from shoveling. Your hands smell of coal even after washing. Your hair holds faint smoke from the stove. Outside, the city is still half buried, but inside, memory is already sorting the storm into scenes. Some will be repeated for years. Some will vanish by morning. That's always the way. History keeps ledgers, maps, laws, photographs, headlines, and death counts. It also loses the exact warmth of a cup passed between strangers. It loses the private joke about Greenland butter, the basket swinging down the stairs, the tired servant closing her eyes over soup, unless someone remembers gently. Tonight, you do. The lamp flame steadies. The newspaper dries near the stove. Snow outside reflects whatever light escapes the windows, giving the room a pale glow from below. People sit in small clusters, speaking more quietly as weariness takes them. The city's great legend is forming, but here it sounds like spoons, breath, and low voices. You let the story settle. They do not need to be solved. They only need to be held for a while, warm and imperfect, like hands around a bowl. Outside, New York lies beneath drifts, already becoming memory. Inside, the storm becomes human, one telling at a time. The thaw begins without ceremony. At first, it is only a drip from an awning, small and hesitant. Then another answers from a cornice. Then a whole row of icicles begins to tick in uneven rhythm, as if the buildings are learning a new language. The sound is delicate, persistent, and strangely intimate after so much wind. You stand near the doorway and listen. The air still holds winter, but its edge has softened. Snow remains piled in high walls along the street, grey now at the edges, marked by soot, boot tracks, and shovel cuts. The clean white surface has become lived in. New York has begun leaving fingerprints on its own burial cloth. Water runs along the trench floor. It gathers in shallow channels, carrying coal dust, straw, grit, and little black curls of street dirt. Your boots sink into slush with a wet sigh. The sound is not noble. It is more like a tired city clearing its throat. Still, it means change. The storm has lost its grip. Not all at once. Weather rarely exits gracefully. The drifts remain tall, the streets remain difficult, and roofs still carry dangerous weight. Yet the sky has lifted. Patches of blue show between clouds. Light falls more directly, revealing the damage that whiteness had hidden with such suspicious elegance. You step outside carefully. The snow walls now gleam with meltwater. Their surfaces are rough, pitted, and streaked with ash. Every shoveled passage smells of wet wool, coal smoke, thawing manure, damp wood, and the mineral cold of melting ice. The scent is not pretty, but it is honest. The city is returning through its smells. A cart moves in the distance. It comes slowly, pulled by a horse picking its steps through slush and broken snow. The wheels jolt over hidden ridges. The driver keeps one hand tight on the reins and the other wrapped in a scarf. The horse snorts, offended but employed. Its harness bells sound dull beneath wet leather. Traffic is becoming possible again. That simple fact feels enormous. A wagon passes, then a man with a hand sled, then two workers carrying poles over their shoulders. A woman crosses the trench with a basket under her shawl. A boy runs beside her and receives immediate correction for running on ice, which he ignores until nearly falling. Education arrives quickly when gravity assists. The grocer is opened wider. His doorway's cleared to the floor now, though snow remains stacked on either side like defeated furniture. He stands inside with rolled sleeves, weighing beans and coffee. The shop smells stronger than ever, rich with flour, soap, dried fruit, kerosene, vinegar, and human urgency. Customers speak with the relief of people buying ordinary things again. Ordinary things feel festive. A candle, a loaf, a newspaper, a packet of coffee, a scoop of oats, a bar of soap, slightly chipped, a bunch of onions with papery skins. None of these objects look heroic, which is how they prefer it. Still, after disruption, each one seems to carry civilization in miniature. You buy a small paper twist of coffee. The grocer folds it carefully and ties it with string. The packet is warm from his hands and fragrant through the paper. You tuck it inside your coat, where it rests against your chest like a private promise. Coffee tomorrow, such wealth. Honestly, kings have bragged about less useful things. At the corner, workers examine overhead wires. One man stands on a ladder braced by two others. Another holds a coil of line, while a supervisor looks upward with the solemn misery of someone seeing future paperwork. Broken wires are being gathered, repaired, or moved away from danger. Ice still clings to some strands, dripping steadily onto hats below. People look up more often now. The storm has taught them the sky is crowded. Wires, rails, signs, awnings, chimneys, and cornices all seem newly suspect. What once appeared normal now feels temporary, vulnerable, and perhaps poorly arranged. The city has not become anti-modern. It has become less innocent about its conveniences. A mainstream consequence begins taking shape. In the years following the blizzard, New York and other cities gave stronger attention to underground infrastructure, including buried wires and eventually rapid transit below the streets. The storm did not create every reform by itself, but it became powerful evidence. Snow had made a public argument, and very few officials could pretend not to hear it. The elevated railway groans back toward life. You hear a distant clatter above the avenue, uneven but real. A train moves slowly along the iron structure, sending meltwater shaking from beams. People in the street look up. Some cheer, some mutter that it is about time. New Yorkers recover their sarcasm very quickly, which is reassuring. The train passes like a wounded triumph. Its windows flash in weak sunlight. Steam trails behind and mingles with thaw mist rising from roofs. The sound is not smooth yet. It rattles, hesitates, and clanks over repaired track. Still, motion has returned to the rails, and with motion comes the first real feeling that the city is stitching itself together. A newspaper seller appears near the trench. He stands on a packed ridge, waving papers in one hand and balancing with the other. His voice is hoarse but ambitious. Headlines tumble over one another. Damage, rescues, delays, losses, bravery, blame. The papers smell of ink and damp fibres. People buy them eagerly, then read while standing in slush. Blame has arrived on schedule. It always does. Some blame weather officials, some blame railway companies, some blame overhead wires, some blame city leaders, some blame everyone who is not currently within arm's reach. Blame is not entirely useless. It can point toward reform, yet it also gives people something to do while boots dry. You read a few lines. The print describes heroic efforts, tragic losses, blocked routes, and astonishing drifts. The words feel both true and incomplete. They cannot capture the smell of beans in the common room, the warmth of a wrapped brick, or the way a messenger slept with one hand near his satchel. Newspapers preserve the city. They also flatten it slightly. A church door stands open. Inside, people are clearing melted snow from the entrance. The stone steps shine wetly. A caretaker sweeps slush into the street with long practice strokes. From within comes the smell of wax, damp wood, and cold stone slowly releasing its chill. The pews are empty now, but they seem to remember bodies. You pause near the doorway. The quiet inside is different from the quiet of the storm. This quiet has space in it. It is not forced by danger or muffled by snow. It is the calm of a room returning to itself after being useful in an emergency. That, too, is a form of rest. Outside, the sunlight touches the snow. The light is bright enough to make you squint. White surfaces throw it upward into your face. Meltwater drops from roofs in sudden little showers. A chunk of snow slides from an awning and lands with a soft, heavy thump, startling a dog that pretends it meant to jump sideways. The dog recovers dignity. Barely, a scholarly uncertainty lingers over the thaw. Historians still debate how the blizzard should be ranked among urban disasters, because numbers alone cannot measure disruption. Snowfall, deaths, financial losses, transit failures, and social memory all tell different stories. The storm was meteorological, certainly, but it was also technological, social, and emotional. You sense all those layers. The snow is not only snow now, it is missed wages, it is delayed letters, it is frightened families, it is shared soup, it is stalled engines and repaired wires, it is a doctor's tired face and a child's excitement. It is a city forced to discover how much of daily life depends on her invisible arrangements. A familiar messenger crosses the street. He moves carefully, satchel buckled, cheek still reddened by cold. He recognizes the doorway and lifts one hand. There is no grand reunion, just a nod exchanged across slush and sunlight. His work has resumed. The delayed words in his bag are moving again, some too late, some still precious. That seems right. Not everything can be restored. Some losses remain losses. Some people will not return home. Some businesses will count damage for weeks. Some families will remember fear longer than snow. The city is not magically healed by dripping eaves and opening shops. A thaw is a beginning, not an apology. Yet beginning matters. You return to the house as afternoon softens. The common room smells of fresh coffee, coal heat, and wet boots lined near the wall. The atmosphere is lighter, though everyone remains tired. Maggie has opened a curtain fully for the first time in days, letting pale sun lie across the floorboards. Dust shines in the beam like tiny wandering flakes. The landlady serves coffee, real coffee, stronger now, with enough body to remind people of ambition. Cups are filled carefully. The first sip is bitter, hot, and magnificent. The old boarder declares it nearly worth being snowbound for, then revises this immediately when the landlady looks at him. Wisdom returns. Laughter moves easily, not loudly. Fatigue has made everyone softer. People speak of errands to attempt, employers to face, relatives to check, letters to send, rooms to clean, boots to repair, coal to order, and gossip to distribute responsibly. The word responsibly receives no confidence from anyone. The house is unsealing. People who were briefly companions will become neighbours again, then perhaps strangers. The salesman will chase his appointments. The seamstress will carry finished work through slushy streets. The messenger will vanish into routes and offices. Maggie will keep labouring behind doors. The children will boast of snow walls until the story grows taller than the drifts. You will carry the room with you. Not literally a way which would be inconvenient, but certain images will stay. Frost on glass, a newspaper drying by the stove, a basket lowered by rope, a damp glove steaming on a chair, a bowl of beans under lamplight, a worker bending again over buried track, the city returning by inches. The sun drops lower, meltwater slows as cold creeps back toward evening. The snow outside hardens at the edges, drips become fewer, then sharper. Somewhere down the street, a shovel scrapes one last stubborn patch. A horse blows through its nostrils. A train clatters faintly overhead, then fades. The room grows golden. Shadows lengthen across the floor. The stove glows steadily, no longer desperate, simply useful. Someone folds blankets. Someone stacks bowls. Someone trims the lamp wick, though daylight still remains. Ordinary order returns in small gestures, each one quiet and determined. You sit beside the window. The glass is clear enough now to show the street, though the lower panes remain edged with frost. Outside, people move slowly through the thawing snow, dark figures against pale banks. Their paths cross and separate. Their voices rise briefly, then soften. The city is no longer vanished, but it's changed by being seen so fragile. You press your hands around the warm cup. The ceramic is chipped, familiar and generous. Coffee steam curls upward, carrying a bitter scent that mingles with coal smoke and drying wool. Your shoulders ease. Your thoughts begin to slow. The blizzard has become weather again, not because it is forgotten, but because people have survived enough to speak of it. Night approaches gently. The lamps come on behind curtains. Snow reflects their glow from the street, sending a pale shimmer back into the room. The sky darkens from grey to blue to something deeper. The city's sounds return cautiously, like animals after thunder. A wheel, a hoof, a call, a bell, a train. You listen with tired gratitude. The blizzard has taught the city humility, though New York will misplace some of that lesson soon enough. Cities are like people that way. Still, certain changes will remain. More wires will go underground. Transit dreams will deepen beneath streets. Emergency planning will gather new urgency. Memory will keep pointing to these white days whenever progress grows too proud, and you, wrapped in warmth, understand the quieter lesson. A city is not only its towers, rails, offices, wires, ferries, banks, and headlines. It is also the hand opening a door against snow. It is the person sharing soup without announcing virtue. It is the worker clearing a path for strangers. It is the lamp kept burning while messages wait. It is the ordinary room that refuses to let cold have the final word. Now the day loosens. You feel the bed waiting upstairs, the blanket rough and familiar, the room dim and calmer. The snow outside is no longer a wall, only a softened presence beneath the windows. It holds lamplight gently. It covers the city not as an enemy now, but as a fading memory of wait and wonder. You climb the stairs slowly. Each step creaks beneath you, a homely sound. a human sound. The hallway smells of wax, warmed wood, and the faint ghost of coffee. Behind doors, people murmur towards sleep. Somewhere a child whispers one last question about snow reaching the moon, and a tired voice answers with patient affection. Your room is waiting. The window glows faintly blue. Frost remains in the corners, fine as lace. The bed cover feels cool at first touch, then begins accepting warmth from your hands. You undress in the quiet, folding each garment with slow care, as if gentleness can help the day settle. You slip beneath the blanket. The sheet is cold against your legs, but only for a moment. Your breath deepens. From the street comes the soft drip of thawing snow, spaced far apart now. From somewhere higher comes the faint tick of a pipe cooling in the wall. The city beyond the glass is tired, bruised, and breathing. And let the last sounds grow smaller. Let the shovel scrape fade into memory. Let the train's distant clatter soften into a lullaby of iron and steam. Let the footsteps in the trench become only a gentle rhythm beneath the snow. The storm has spent its great voice, and the room has found its hush again. You are warm inside. Outside, the white banks shine under moonless cloud, no longer wild, only waiting. The streets will clear, the letters will travel, the stoves will burn, the stories will settle into families, papers, offices, and quiet bedrooms where someone will say, "Do you remember the blizzard?" And another voice will answer softly, "You do remember. You remember the city as it paused, listened, shared, shivered, laughed, and returned. You remember that history can be enormous, yet still arrive as a cup in your hand. You remember that warmth is never only heat. It is care made visible in a cold world. Your eyes grow heavy. The room dims at the edges. The snow outside becomes less like weather and more like a folded quilt spread over the tired city. Lamps glow beneath it, soft and patient. Behind the glass, New York sleeps in fragments, one household at a time, while the thaw counts its quiet drops. Rest now. The storm has passed into story, and the story has done its gentle work. Your breathing slows beside the fading window, the blanket settles. The last coal in the stove gives one small click, then rests. Everything that was loud grows distant. Everything that was cold stays outside. And you drift. Sleep well.